Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. Most Dangerous Valkyrie of the Marvel Universe. Chapter 81. On the one hand, S.H.I.E.L.D. fooled Peter, trying to find a way to check and balance Zon-Lu, and on the other hand, it had to find a way to suppress the pig teammates to prevent them from angering Zon-Lu and making the situation out of control. After Lindemann's threats and lures failed, he went back and reported Zon-Lu's attitude, which immediately stimulated many generals in the military to want to attack Zon-Lu and show him some color. In fact, at the beginning, not all the generals wanted to trouble Zon-Lu. Most of the people who jumped out were generals who had great opinions on mutants. And Zon-Lu's ultimate boundless qigong has been proven to have a significant effect on activating mutant genes in humans, which stimulated this group of people to want to use force against Zon-Lu. However, the Yankees have never been able to unify their minds. Some generals who don't care about mutants are opposed to solving Zon-Lu by force. Because the relative gene is activated and becomes an example of a mutant, more ordinary people remain unchanged, and this proportion is not high. And ordinary people becoming superpowers means that this group of generals can also become superpowers, and this is what they care about. They are still waiting for those elite fighters to come back to teach them exercises after they achieve magnetic field rotation, give them magnetic field acceleration, and help them become superpowers too. Even if they use force against Zon-Lu in the future, at least let them become superpowers before talking about it. They don't know the huge difference between the martial realms, and they still use the old way of thinking, planning to use the number of people to accumulate combat power and overwhelm Zon-Lu. Under this complex network of interests, a group of generals barely reached the previous agreement and asked Lindemann to convey it to Zon-Lu. But who knew that Zon-Lu turned a blind eye to their goodwill, and went all the way, even putting forward such exaggerated conditions, which angered all the generals. They are the masters of the Federation and part of the ruler. And Zon-Lu is nothing more than the owner of a mere martial arts gym. It is too arrogant to try to overpower them. This kind of thinking has seriously exceeded their bottom line. What they want is an obedient dog, not a master for themselves. Therefore, when the generals learned about Zon-Lu's true thoughts, they immediately reached a consensus to teach this self-important outsider a lesson and let him learn to respect power. It was under such circumstances that Nick came to the Pentagon. He must stop these generals from doing stupid things, otherwise the consequences will be too serious. Nick, what's the matter with you here? A group of generals didn't have any good feelings for S.H.I.E.L.D., which was always snatching food from them. Do you think I'm willing to come to this crappy place of yours? Every time I come here, I feel that my IQ has been lowered by 10%. Nick said angrily with a dark face. No one invited you. A group of generals also had bad tempers, and they were not used to his bad habits. Although you are a bunch of idiots, I don't want you to kill yourself. In other words, it doesn't matter if you die, but don't drag the Federation into a vortex of destruction. Nick taunted. What stupid things are you talking about? This is the Pentagon, the safest place in the world, even safer than the White House. A general shouted angrily. Hee, your defense here can only guard against missiles and so on. In the face of super criminals, you can only wait to die. Nick laughed at these short-sighted guys. Any criminal who dares to attack the Pentagon is at war with the Federation, and there is only one way to die. The generals said this as a matter of course. Don't be too self-righteous. The super criminals you are facing now are different from the group of trash fish before. The Federation can't do anything about him. Thinking of Zon-Lu's exaggerated force, Nick's mood darkened just like his face. Who are you referring to? The generals finally realized what Nick wanted to express. Who else is it? Who are you going to fight with? Nick asked back. Don't be silly, Nick. If it wasn't for your S.H.I.E.L.D.'s interference, we would have taken that guy down long ago. A irascible general said angrily. Haha, what a big joke. When's the last time you heard something like that? Oh, when the Hulk showed up. Is General Ross there? Where's your Hulk? Nick grinned very happy. The Hulk was an accident that time, and many of our powerful weapons couldn't be used in the city. Rose blushed angrily and roared angrily after being named and ridiculed. Oh, really? How did I remember that you launched a missile in the suburbs later, but it didn't seem to have any effect. Nick picked up which pot he didn't open, and poked Ross's trachea specifically. The military doesn't just have one missile. If one is not enough, it can have 10 or 100. There is no enemy that the military can't destroy. The military's interests are integrated, and other generals will not sit back and watch Ross being ridiculed. Stupid. The times are different. One of your missiles can't solve the Hulk. 10 or 100 missiles are still the same. Or are you planning to use nuclear warheads? Nick Cyclops circled around the room and said coldly. A 5-star general sitting on the top seat reached out and knocked on the table. After attracting everyone's attention, he said calmly, when necessary, we can deploy more black technology weapons. Nick, you are not the only Aegis, only the Bureau has black technology. Well, even if your black tech weapons can defeat the Hulk, so what? Hulk is vulnerable to Zhan Lu. Nick also reached out and knocked on the table to strengthen his tone. According to the information I got, Zhan Lu has reached the 25th level of magnetic field rotation, and he can't die in the face of nuclear bombs. Moreover, he can fly, faster than missiles, and nuclear bombs can't hit him at all. The 5-star general smiled disdainfully. Don't be stupid, Nick, that's what that guy used to deceive others. According to the information I got, he also said that when the realm reaches a certain height, he can open up the world. After hearing this, a group of generals burst into laughter. Another general also said proudly, Thor is also in the realm of magnetic field rotation, but what can he do? Wasn't he pierced by a cold weapon? Zhan Lu's force may be slightly higher than Thor and Iron Man, but higher or very limited, and cannot escape the weakness of carbon-based organisms. The weapon that pierced Peter's body is an artifact. Now it is inserted at the entrance of the main hall of the martial arts hall together with the head of the underwater creature. You also have Tony's body data when the electric current pushed the realm, and you know that ordinary thermal weapons are against him. Can't work. We also know that Tony is still a carbon-based life and needs food, air to survive, and of course, beautiful women. A group of generals laughed loudly again, chattering into a mess, envious of Tony's, strong, in their words. Since you are so confident, let's do a battle test. The shield side will be played by Thor Peter. Let's speak with facts. Nick finally threw out the solution he had prepared earlier. Okay, it's a deal. The Mojave Desert is the largest desert in the United States. It is located in the southwestern United States, southeastern Southern California, across southeastern California, northwest Arizona, Utah and southern Nevada. It covers an area of more than 57,000 square kilometers. It is a typical basin terrain, with special western desert scenery. Although it is a desert, it is not desolate. Las Vegas, the casino city, is a night pearl in the Mojave Desert. It gets brighter and brighter at night, illuminating every luxury in the city. All kinds of people have developed a rare tourist city in the world in the desert. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration (NASA) also set up a detection satellite base here, and combined with bases in other places to establish a distant space communication network. Similarly, deep in the desert, there is also a secret military base. Today, a large number of distinguished guests were ushered in the inaccessible base. Various military aircraft landed on the runway one after another, sending batches of generals and observers to the base. But they are not today's protagonist. Today's protagonist is a 17-year-old boy. After more than half a year of martial arts training, coupled with nutrition to keep up, the current Peter has grown up again. His height and weight have increased, he is tall and strong, his face is distinct, and his body is full of muscles. Tough guy. But what is regrettable is that his heart does not seem to have the slightest sign of tempering, and he is still weak and easy to deceive. He was limped by the black stewed egg in a few words, and now he volunteered to help the military conduct weapons tests. From the beginning to the end, he didn't know the real purpose of Nick and the military's test, and was completely used. Haha. Welcome to Raytheon. On behalf of the military, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Raytheon. The colonel in charge of the reception was very enthusiastic. After all, Peter is easy to cheat, and it is well known in the upper echelons. It's just that Nick, the nigger, made an early move, and brought Peter under shield before they could react. But even if you don't belong to your own system, if you leave a good impression, you may be able to fool people over at critical moments, and do a little favor or something. After all, good people don't know how to reject others. Before Peter, the people who flattered Peter were basically some small people like student union officers and cheerleaders. The biggest person he had ever seen was the principal. Of course, the unreliable senior brother and the kind Uncle Osborne do not count. Now a colonel is so polite to him, surrounded by him to ask his health. I don't know how enthusiastic he is, and he immediately feels a little flattered. After some courtesy, Peter was taken to the training ground, where there are a large number of tanks and fighter jets ready to go. Peter, this actual combat test will use a lot of new weapons that have not been announced to the outside world. It is dangerous in itself. If you feel embarrassed, you can still withdraw now. Colonel Schroeder hypocritically persuaded. Before I came, Mr. Fury had already told me that it was mainly to test some new weapons. If ordinary people are used to test, the actual combat effect is not sure, and it will be very dangerous. But for warriors in the realm of magnetic field rotation said that although there is a certain degree of danger, there is basically no need to worry about life-threatening. My recovery ability is very strong. A slight injury will not have much impact at all. Peter replied confidently. Schroeder secretly admired Nick's wrist, completely playing with such an NB Thor in his palms. In this case, then you start to prepare. Schroeder pointed forward and introduced. The vast desert in front is the entire testing ground, and you can dodge and hide on it as much as you want. He handed Peter a pair of communication earbuds with a microphone, and said, "When you wear this, we will give you a brief introduction in the earbuds before each test, and you can dodge or fight back in a targeted manner. If you feel that you can't hold on, you can surrender through the microphone, and we will terminate testing immediately." "Okay, thank you." Peter reached out to take the earplugs and put them on, tested the communication effect of the microphone, and after confirming that there was no problem, he unfolded his body and ran towards the center of the desert. When Schroeder returned to the command room, a group of generals and observers had already sat down in the conference room, watching the satellite images on the big screen. After Schroeder and the generals saluted, they were ordered to come to the console and start the command test. "Peter, our first round is a conventional weapons test, using the Jericho missile. Are you ready?" "Ready, you can start anytime." At the same time, on the big screen, Peter stretched out his hand and made a V shape towards the base. "Then, I now declare that the weapon test has officially begun, and the missile force will begin its attack." The sound of missiles launching came from the outside, and on the big screen, everyone could clearly see that Peter was standing still, with thunderbolts flashing on his body, and all the missiles were approaching Peter. When he was by his side, he was detonated by lightning. Through the high-definition satellite images, it can be clearly seen that Peter's hair was not messed up in the face of such a fierce attack. The second round of weapon testing, degaussing special shells, are made of polymer materials and will not be affected by magnetic fields. The attack begins. These weapons were developed specifically for magnetic fields, and the military placed high hopes on them, but the final result disappointed them. Peter still stood there without moving a muscle, and the degaussed special shells were no different from ordinary shells to him. Some people in the military have already begun to stir up a commotion, obviously unable to understand why this special degaussing shell does not seem to have any effect on Peter. Black Braised Dan sat on the seat and leaned back, watching a group of idiots whispering there without saying a word. He had known for a long time that this would be the result. Although he had no memory of Zhang Lu's battle because of the rewinding of time, Carol had told him about setting a trap against Zhang Lu, but it only worked once, was ruined. Therefore, he easily came to the conclusion that these weapons developed against Magneto must be ineffective against Zhang Lu, otherwise he wouldn't take the risk of using the cosmic Rubik's Cube as power to deal with Zhang Lu. But he also knew that the generals in the military were all guys who didn't cry when they saw the coffin. No matter how he explained it, the other party would not believe it. So instead of talking with your mouth and making others question it, it is better to speak with facts and dispel their arrogance and prejudice at once. The third round of weapon testing, the electromagnetic gun is used to attack, and it is now charging, and it is expected to launch in 3 minutes. Following Schroeder's order, in the base, a building with no difference in appearance from the surrounding rooms, suddenly the roof opened, and a strange device rose from below. The device is more than 10 meters long, like a long cylinder divided in two from the middle, and the left and right ends are half relatively suspended semi-cylindrical guide rails. The high-voltage wires are connected to the guide rails, and a large amount of current is flowing in the guide rails, flowed by. Near the rear, a long bullet-shaped tungsten block is floating in the two guide rails, rotating rapidly. As the charging progresses, the warhead turns faster and faster. Finally, after its speed reached a certain critical value, the force field that restricted it suddenly disappeared, and the warhead instantly disappeared in place, leaving only an umbrella-shaped sonic boom cloud at the end of the guide rail. Everyone in the conference room saw Peter punching forward on the big screen, and then only heard a huge thunder roar, which was the sonic boom of the electromagnetic gun. Then they saw a violent explosion on the screen, and then heard the second explosion of fist and bullet. Schroeder zoomed out the focus of the satellite, and people saw that in the center of the desert, a deep ditch had been plowed in front of a certain area, while the rear was unscathed. As the smoke and dust dissipated, Schroeder zoomed in on the satellite again, and everyone saw that Peter on the screen was still unharmed, not even his clothes were damaged. The generals and observers immediately took a breath. This electromagnetic cannon attack is actually several times more powerful than known missiles, but it was unable to leave any scars on Peter's body. This was something they never thought of beforehand. The fourth round of weapons testing, using a space-based kinetic energy weapon, is expected to be launched in 30 seconds. In space, a military satellite that has been on standby suddenly changed its orbit, opened its blades, sent a tungsten rod reserved in the belly of the satellite to the orbit, and then continuously injected energy into the orbit. After a while, the tungsten rod disappeared from its orbit, falling directly towards the Earth like a meteor. Peter raised his head to the sky, looked at the man-made stars that fell on his forehead, felt a strong threat, and his heart couldn't help beating violently. He didn't care about continuing to be handsome. He took all the electric current back into his body, and summoned up all his strength. Facing the crisis of life and death, he finally took another step forward. Gah! The magnetic field is turning, the fifth heaven. The ultimate formula of quantification, block my teeth. A mushroom cloud soared into the sky on the screen, covering the entire satellite's field of vision. Schroeder tried to zoom out to observe, but the mushroom cloud covered a wide range, and it was completely impossible to observe the situation inside. This space-based kinetic energy weapon is not inferior to some small-yield nuclear bombs at all, and it is clean and radiation-free, safe and environmentally friendly. Apart from the useless satellite and slow launch, there are no major weaknesses. Everyone at the scene held their breath, waiting for the mushroom cloud to dissipate, and then they could confirm whether Thor Peter inside was dead or not. Even Nick got a little nervous. After knowing what Zhan-Lu did from Carol, Nick regarded Zhan-Lu as a threat. With his character, he would not be willing to lick others all the time. On the one hand, due to the lack of actual force, he showed his favor to Zhan-Lu and prevented other organizations from provoking Zhan-Lu, but at the same time he was also looking for someone who could check and balance or overwhelm Zhan-Lu. Tony Stark is no longer counting, and the remaining Thor Peter is the object of his high hopes. Young, innocent, and immature in 3 views, the future is limitless, and the use value is super high. Although he felt that Peter should be able to take this blow, there are accidents in everything. If he overestimated Peter's ability and wasted Peter here, he would regret it to death. Before the mushroom cloud dissipated, a hoarse voice came from Schroeder's communicator. Ahem, I admit defeat, there is no need to continue. Peter surrendered. In fact, at this point, it is no longer worth continuing to test. If you go further, you can basically only release nuclear bombs, and those with small yields are useless. But the speed of nuclear bombs is far less than that of space-based kinetic energy weapons. They have all seen Peter's lightning-like speed. Whether the nuclear bomb can reach him is still a matter of uncertainty. The physique of the strong magnetic field is so strong that those poison gas bombs, biochemical weapon bombs, and laser weapons may not be very effective. Raytheon Peter's performance hit the old guys in the military hard. Nick breathed a sigh of relief, reached out and grabbed the communicator, and said, Peter, the test is over, you can come back. Throwing down the communicator, he turned his head to look at a group of generals with gloomy faces, and said with a sarcasm, now you can reconsider the action plan to capture Zhan-Lu. After finishing speaking, he turned his head and left. Now all fools know that their original plan of action can't even take Peter down, let alone catch the stronger Zhan-Lu. In the meeting room, there was a moment of silence. Nick went out of the barracks and saw Peter, who was running back quickly. Peter's clothes were all in tatters. It was obvious that when he was attacked, he no longer cared about using the magnetic force to protect his clothes. However, the communicator on his head is not broken, and obviously the space-based kinetic energy weapon attack has limited damage to him. Sorry, Nick, I failed, Peter said a little nervously. Before coming here, he was full of confidence, but after seeing so many terrifying weapons, the confidence he had just built up was on the verge of collapsing again. No, Peter, you've done a good job. We're just doing a test today, not a real war, and it's impossible to use very dangerous weapons against you. You have successfully made weapons experts realize the inadequacy of existing weapons to make them better. Well done, Peter. Nick had no intention of telling him the truth, and it was not a bad thing to make him fearful of human force. At least when he wanted to do something bad in the future, he would be much more honest when he thought about the attack he encountered today. Nick put his arms around Peter's shoulders and led him to his own plane, while asking with concern, "How is it? Are you injured? S.H.I.E.L.D. has the best medical equipment. I vomited a little bit of blood, but it's okay. Besides, I broke through the magnetic field and turned the fifth heaven." Peter happily shared his progress with Nick. "Oh, this is a good thing, and it is worth celebrating." Nick smiled on the surface, but scolded his mother in his heart. Such a terrifying attack could wipe out half of a town, but in the end it only vomited a few mouthfuls of blood. It's too abnormal. In particular, this broken qigong is actually always advancing in leaps and bounds. It is not scientific at all, and it doesn't even teach the basics. This is a headache. This Zanlu looks like the magnetic field is turning 25 heavens, who knows if he will turn into 30 heavens when he hits it. Sure enough, the person who can check and balance the magnetic field to rotate the martial artist can only rotate the martial artist with the same magnetic field. He secretly glanced at the stupid Peter next to him, and thought to himself, should he go to the battlefield a few more times, and raise a few more levels so that he can catch up to Zanlu earlier. In this world, no one and can be regarded as exhaustive. Orlo reported the emergence of the new mutants to Professor X that day. This is the second case of a disciple whose X gene has been activated by ultimate Wuliang Qigong, which can already explain a lot of problems. However, Professor X thought that the shape-shifting girl Ruiwen was in the martial arts gym, so he would definitely tell Magneto the news, and according to Magneto's personality, knowing that Ultimate Infinity Qigong possesses this function, he would definitely not embarrass Zanlu again. Moreover, Professor X also knew through some channels that the members of the Mutant Brotherhood were far away from the United States, so a misunderstanding occurred. But in fact, Ruiwen had already left the martial arts hall before that, and went to persuade Magneto to lead the mutants to the road of Valkyrie, and had no idea that a second mutant appeared in the martial arts hall. As a result, Professor X thought that the threat from Magneto was over, but in fact, Magneto and Zanlu had already made an appointment to fight in the middle of the month. On the other hand, in order to speed up Peter's upgrade, S.H.I.E.L.D. used the name of Rescue to send Peter, the God of Thunder, around wherever there is danger. Although fighting some vampires, devils and other creatures opened Peter's horizons and improved his realm completely, these battles did not put much pressure on him. As a result, he was still trapped in the fifth layer of magnetic field rotation, without any progress. And Sharon Carter was also drawn out by Coulson on the grounds that the university had an internship arrangement, and joined the upgrade plan. However, the fourth apprentice also appeared, that is, the old homeless man in Chinatown that Zanlu had been optimistic about before, and his name was Wang Yunxiang. This name is not any of the main and supporting characters with a name in the Marvel world, but an ordinary passerby with no part in the show. The old man was almost the same as Peter, and he came here entirely for the $10,000 monthly allowance. He has a clear goal and is willing to work hard, relying on the acceleration effect of the magnetic field and the system on the registered disciples, finally let him achieve his wish and change his own destiny. After learning from Zanlu the various martial arts mysteries of how electric currents promote rotation and transformation into magnetic fields, he happened to be asked to take over Sharon's position to teach everyone. Then on the second day after the new fourth junior brother took over, Tony came back to work. People are old and treacherous, horses are old and slippery, rabbits are old and eagles are hard to catch. Lao Wang is almost 70 years old this year, and he has never seen anything before, so he was so happy to be lazy at the moment. Without saying a word, he gave up his position to the elder brother. He has been at the bottom all his life, suffered countless hardships, suffered countless sins, and developed the habit of acting cautiously. Now he seldom even talks to Pepper, just because he is afraid that the elder brother will misunderstand. Old Wang is very good at being a man. Although he has become the fourth senior brother, he has no heirs. After receiving the entry allowance, he changed himself into clean clothes, and then invited all the seniors to have a dinner together. Then he also bought 4 boxes of gifts for Master Zhang as a thank you gift. This is the first time that Zhang has received a thank you gift. None of the previous 3 apprentices has received it. It has to be said that foreigners who can speak Chinese and authentic Chinese are completely different in terms of way of thinking and work habits. Zhang Deu looked at this old apprentice who was older than him with admiration and was very satisfied. Everyone has close and distant relatives, and Zhang is no exception. Lao Wang only used a little thing to rank himself ahead of Sharon Carter in Zhang heart. The reason why he hasn't surpassed Tony and Peter is entirely because these 2 people may help Zhang break through the upper limit of his skills. Zhang is very realistic. Personal likes and dislikes are always ranked behind the ultimate goal. To put it bluntly, if you have milk, you are a mother. If Ruiwen can also enter the sect, it is likely that Lao Wang's sect status will be reduced by 1. The current movement in the martial arts hall is the top priority for every organization. Old Wang succeeded in getting started, and his personal information was put on the desks of various organizations that night. Then Lao Wang was recruited by various organizations sending people in turn. There is no way, there are only 4 entry-level disciples now, and S.H.I.E.L.D. has swallowed 2 of them, and the other is the big capitalist Tony Stark. The rest who can be competed for is only Wang Yunxiang. Old Wang is a bad guy. He talks good things to everyone, and then under the banner of knowing the background of the organization's strength, he collects the names and general information of all the organizations that have wooed him, and then runs over to present to the master. 6 whistleblowers came. Master, I've recorded all these organizations in my notebook, and I counted them as 1, and I didn't miss any of them. Zhang looked at Wang Yunxiang with a loyal expression, and asked, my sect doesn't prohibit disciples from joining other organizations to work for them. Why don't you choose the one with the best qualifications to join them? Master, I'm almost 70 this year, and I've been in this foreigner's territory for decades, so I have some understanding of their behavior and style. They are attracting disciples now not because of how great they are, but because they are disciples of your master. If disciples really join their organization, they will inevitably be under their control. At that time, if they let the disciples monitor the words and deeds of the master, or leak the whereabouts of the master, will the disciples do it or not? If the disciples do it, it will be against the grace of the master to teach the art. If the disciples don't do it, then everything they promised will not be fulfilled, and they may even find trouble for the disciples. Instead of being entangled by then, it's better not to get on their thief ship. Lao Wang stood respectfully in front of Zhang honestly speaking out his thoughts, without hiding anything. Everything about the disciple is bestowed by the mentor. Although the disciple is unworthy, he is absolutely unwilling to do anything harmful to the mentor. Zhang sighed inwardly when he heard the words. Indeed, it was the Chinese who truly understood the true meaning of master and apprentice. In the East, masters and apprentices are like father and son. These foreigners can't understand it anyway. If Zhang becomes an enemy of the world after a few days, people like Tony and Peter will probably stand on the opposite side of Zhang. This is also one of the important reasons why Zhang has been relatively restrained and has not let his epileptic temper flare up. At least, he must exercise restraint before breaking through the upper limit of ultimate Wuliang Qigong. This is enlightenment. But if Zhang becomes the public enemy of the world in the future, there is a high possibility that Wang Yunxiang will firmly stand by his side. The reason why I don't say it to death is because people's minds have changed. Lao Wang thinks this way now, but what about a few years later? Whether this is still the case is unknown. Still, that's enough. Lao Wang, an old man, is worth cultivating. The night of the full moon, the time of the decisive battle. In the Sahara Desert, the bright moon hangs high, casting cool moonlight, shining on this uninhabited land that has been dead for thousands of years. Zhang Lushuan stood in the stratosphere, looking down, but he couldn't find any trace of Magneto. Shouldn't this shrink? Or did Ruiwen cancel the appointment? He lowered his figure, passed through the stratosphere, descended to the troposphere, and then suspended his body at a position about 200 to 300 meters above the ground, raised his breath and made a sound that traveled hundreds of miles. Wan Tai Wang, you dead servant, what are you messing with? This seat has already arrived, why don't you get out and die? The sound was like rolling thunder, rolling away in all directions. Even the various poisonous insects under the desert were frightened and fled outside one after another. The grand scene when Zhongliu and Carol fought back then reappeared. Hordes of poisonous insects fled the area in a panic like a tide. As the sound wave spread, Zhongliu felt that in a distant place, a weak fluctuation suddenly became more intense, and then shot towards him at high speed. Zhongliu raised his eyes and saw an old man with a hooked nose, wrinkled face, wearing a metal helmet, and a metal plate under his feet, floating in the air. Magneto flew up to Zhongliu. With a face full of anger, he cursed. Boy, don't you have any sense of time? I've been waiting since morning until now, and I thought you wouldn't dare to come. Mouth, silly bird. Since it's a martial arts competition, of course it must be on a full moon night, so it's romantic enough. Zhongliu raised at this old man who didn't understand Eastern culture at all, and he was not polite, and he just started to complain. It looks like you are Wan Tai Wang. Presumptuous. Kid, you actually dare to encourage Ruiwen to split the Brotherhood. I can't tolerate you. Today, there is no Charles to protect you. Eric was also very upset with Zhongliu. Not only was he, a non-mutant, actually able to manipulate magnetic fields similar to himself, but he also taught other apprentices who could manipulate magnetic fields. Rare things are precious, and the road ability that everyone knows loses its deterrent power. It is a major blow to his prestige as the leader of the Mutant Brotherhood. Magneto should be unique. How can the streets be full of Magneto? So he had long had the intention to kill Zhongliu. What's more, this fool committed suicide by himself, and he didn't know what kind of ecstasy drug was given to Ruiwen, so that Ruiwen dared to betray him, ran back and said that he wanted the mutant to take the Walk God road, and persuaded himself and cooperate. After being rejected by herself, Ruiwen actually dared to publicize in the Mutant Brotherhood, saying that she wanted to walk out of the third way of mutants. This is a blatant attempt to split the Brotherhood of Mutants, unforgivable. But after all, Ruiwen is his little sister who has followed him for many years, and she is also the backbone of the mutants. Of course, he wants to pull her back from the wrong path. He put Ruiwen under house arrest, came to the place of the decisive battle, and after beheading this guy, he returned with Zhongliu's head, which would definitely make Ruiwen change his mind. For a person like him, Zhongliu is very experienced. Only when force is paramount, force can subdue it. At that moment, he laughed loudly and said, Wan Tai Wang, today I will teach you the correct use of magnetic field. Hee, you're not afraid of blowing your tongue in the wind. Eric activated the magnetic field, and the steel plate under his feet drove his body to quickly distance himself. At the same time, with a wave of his hand, a large amount of iron-containing sandstone in the desert suddenly swept up from the ground, like a tornado, wrapping Zhongliu in it, repeatedly friction. Zhongliu hung in the air, motionless, sneered as he watched the storm of iron sand outside his protective chi. One or two, they only know how to play long distance. Who did you learn from? After Tony suffered a loss, he has already learned how to behave. It seems that you haven't experienced the beatings of society yet. As soon as he raised his breath, he didn't need any moves. He flew towards Eric like a giant cannon. The iron sand tornado around him was pierced directly like paper, and the slightest blocking effect was useless. Didn't work. Zhongliu's current speed has far exceeded the speed of sound, and he arrived in front of Eric in an instant. The distance he opened for safety did not work at all. Puji, have a taste of the fist that the magnetic field turns. Zhongliu punched, and Eric hurriedly mobilized the steel plate to block it, but the special alloy steel plate he carefully prepared was pierced through like a gauze. The fist landed on Eric's chest, and there was a crackling sound. He didn't know how many bones were broken. He was punched and flew several miles away before he fell to the ground with a bang. Mouth, such a weak body. Zhongliu curled his lips. If he hadn't withdrawn a little force at the last moment, I'm afraid that this punch would have crushed Eric's body into powder. Eric can do well as a long-range mage, at least the power of the magnetic field is really awesome, but once he is close, he will be a crispy skin. I don't know where he got the confidence to call himself Magneto. Perhaps it is the foil of the peers. Zhonglu immediately thought of it. The name of Magneto comes from the comics, and the Magneto in it is worthy of the name, but such a big scene cannot be filmed in film and television dramas, had to weaken it. TCH, so boring. He flew over slowly, looked at Eric who was struggling to get up on the ground, and sarcastically said, Wan Tiwang, do you know how to play with the magnetic field now? Eric was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, unable to get up. He was limp on the ground, with a disbelief on his face, and asked in surprise, how did you do it? Stupid words. Do you even need to ask? This is the way of the martial god. Zhang Luxuan stood in the sky, looking down at him. No matter what the great magnetic field of the universe is, it is something outside of the body. Only when it becomes the magnetic field of one's own life can it be one's own. The power of the magnetic field rotation will strengthen the body. The strong magnetic field rotation should be like a warrior, punching to the flesh, playing close combat. How have you learned the power of this magnetic field rotation? Eric was slumped, and sighed. Unexpectedly, I called Magneto in vain, and I went the wrong way. The matter has come to this point, it is useless to talk, you can kill me. You tell Ruiwen that she is right, and the Mutant Brotherhood will be handed over to her. Shut up, you poor street. Zhang Lu was furious, pointing at his nose and cursing. How precious is my time, is it possible that I made a special trip here just to kill you, a good for nothing? If you lose, you want to die. You really are a waste. What you have to do now is to comprehend the power of the magnetic field as soon as possible, and then come and defeat me. Look, I'll show you one more time. If you can't learn it, just be a waste for the rest of your life. Zhang Lu lowered his body, transferred the power of the magnetic field to his hands, let Eric feel it carefully for a while, and then slammed down on Eric's right leg. With one punch, Eric's right leg was instantly gone. Ah! Eric screamed. Shut up, trash. Have you learned it? Zhang Lu used electric current to burn Eric's wound to stop the bleeding, preventing him from bleeding to death. Eric fought back the pain and shook his head. Didn't learn. Okay, let's do it again. Zhang Lu once again transferred the power of the magnetic field to his hand, and sent it to Eric. Eric's head was covered with cold sweat, and he forced himself to concentrate to feel the magnetic field on Zhang Luquan. After a while, Zhang Lu withdrew his fist and punched Eric's left leg again. Eric's left leg also disappeared immediately. The severe physical pain and spiritual blow made Eric roll his eyes and fainted. Mouth, what a trash. You'll faint like this. Sure enough, you haven't been tempered by the rotation of the magnetic field, and your willpower is as weak as tofu. Zhang Lu stopped Eric's bleeding first, then woke him up with a few slaps, and forced him to ask, have you learned this time? Eric said angrily, if you want to kill me, what is it to humiliate me like this? Who has time to humiliate you? Don't be a fool. Since you haven't learned it, come back. Zhang Lu repeated the previous process again, and then broke Eric's left hand. Seeing that it still didn't work, he did it again and broke Eric's right hand. So far, Eric has no limbs, but he still has not been able to learn how to rotate the magnetic field. You're such a good for nothing. What a waste of your natural ability to manipulate magnetic fields. Zhang Lu cursed angrily. But Eric has become a human stick, dying, and he doesn't even have the strength to curse. Wasting my time. Zhang Lu spit on him, then got up and flew away. As for whether this trash will live or die after that, it has nothing to do with him. When Zhang Lu flew away, Eric struggled to shake his head. After a long time of effort, he finally rubbed off his helmet on the sand. Charles. He silently called his old friend's name in his heart. As if by telepathy, Professor X on the other side of the earth immediately heard his call. Professor X closed his eyes, and immediately sensed the bad situation of the old man. Eric, what's wrong with you? Why are you like this? Charles, I need your help. Someone come pick me up. Eric said weakly. I'll be right there, hang in there, Eric. Professor X opened his eyes, and immediately issued an order to let the plane take off and head straight to the Sahara Desert at full speed. Relying on the extreme speed of the black tech fighter, Professor X finally managed to arrive before Magneto died, and rescued him from the desert. Sending Eric into the medical cabin on the fighter plane, Charles looked at his old friend who had passed out through the door of the medical cabin, with a gloomy face and murderous intent in his heart. Eric's tragic situation also stunned the X-Men. Although they and Magneto are old enemies and often fight together, not many people actually died because of this. Everyone has a tacit understanding with each other. Like Eric, who has no limbs and can only live in a wheelchair in the future, it would be more enjoyable to kill him. This is clearly to torture people. This is something the X-Men cannot accept under any circumstances. Professor, who did this? Cyclops asked. I don't know yet, we have to wait until Eric wakes up. Professor X's face was calm as usual, but in his eyes, there was an endless storm, and as soon as he found the target, it would pour out. Enemy overwhelmed. It's better to read his memory directly, and then let's ask Chi-Ren to kill him. Professor X shook his head. His anger didn't wash away his rationality, and the current situation was not enough for him to destroy his principles. Things are not that simple. You all know how powerful Eric is. But now he is seriously injured, his limbs were crippled and thrown in the desert. There are no traces of battle around him. What does this mean? He fell into a trap, most likely he was betrayed by the people around him. Cyclops replied immediately. Eric has offended too many people these years. It is not surprising that anything happens to him. Even if he is betrayed by the Brotherhood, it is not unacceptable. His iron blood policy, it's really. Professor X hesitated to speak, and didn't say the rest, but everyone present understood. Although Magneto's high-pressure policy did allow many mutants to quickly grow into powerful fighters, it did not mean that these fighters were loyal to him. There are many fighters who are loyal fans of Magneto, but more fighters are fearful and hateful. Rather than being loyal to him, it is better to say that they are awed by his force and dare not disobey. Therefore, it is not impossible for these fighters to rebel in groups one day. If it turns out that this is a civil turmoil in the Mutant Brotherhood, and the murderer is also a mutant, then, shall we intervene? Chin asked hesitantly. Professor X took a deep breath, and his tone gradually turned cold. I'm fully prepared for Eric to die somewhere in the world one day. But they can kill Eric, but they shouldn't torture him like this. Also, such a brutal new mutant leader is not a good thing. If this happens, then we should simply wipe out the Brotherhood of Mutants and liberate those ordinary mutants who are unwilling to fight to the death. Without Eric in the middle, I believe that other fighters will no longer be opponents of the X-Men. Cyclops cheered up. If he could wipe out the X-Men's long-standing enemy, it would save a lot of trouble in the future. Although it is impossible for all mutants to join the X-Men, there will definitely be new opposition organizations, but those small organizations will take time to grow, and they will no longer threaten the X-Men in the short term. Okay, Professor, after I return to the Academy, I will release a message to let everyone get ready. However, plans are not as fast as changes. X Academy's medical level is quite good. Eric woke up from a coma before the plane arrived at the Academy. Professor X and others couldn't wait to come to the medical cabin and asked who had launched the betrayal and hurt him. When they learned from Eric that the culprit who mutilated his limbs and left him in the desert was Zon Lu, the ultimate leader of the infinite sect that Professor X had always wanted to protect, Professor X's expression was quite ugly. This is really a prank by Goddess of Fate. When Charles and Eric shared information with each other, they couldn't help but sigh. Eric intends to kill Zon Lu because he can create superhumans, but Zon Lu can not only create superhumans but also mutants. Originally, this news should have been detected by the shape-shifting girl Ruiwen, and then passed on to Eric, but Eric had sent Ruiwen to the war before, and was sent back to the Brotherhood of Mutants by Zon Lu, so he missed the news. If according to the normal situation, after Ruiwen reported the news, she would definitely be able to hear the news when she returned to the martial arts hall. But because of the road to the Valkyrie, raised by Ruiwen, she was placed under house arrest by Eric. In fact, Charles also had a way to inform Eric of the news, but because he knew that Ruiwen was lurking in the martial arts gym, he didn't do anything unnecessary. Moreover, the intelligence that Charles judged Ruiwen came from the confrontation with Eric in the outskirts of New York, which traced back to Eric's plan to enter the New York Killing Exhibition 6. After all these blunders, Eric's engagement with Zon Lu was not cancelled, which eventually led to Eric becoming a human stick now. Charles looked at his old friend in embarrassment, not knowing how to comfort him. Now he has completely given up the idea of avenging his old friend. On the one hand, Zanlu's martial arts are a bit exaggerated. Even Magneto's martial power is instantly lost. Unless Charles directly launches a mental attack, he probably can't beat him. On the other hand, the existence of Zanlu is very important to the group of mutants. Although the total number of mutants has increased over the years, compared to billions of humans, the number of mutants is pitifully small. Moreover, neither the mutant side nor the human government has found a way to transform humans and mutants into each other. And Zanlu's ultimate infinite Qigong can unilaterally transform human beings into mutants without losing control. This matter is very important. To put it bluntly, Zanlu is now more important than Magneto, who can only make trouble. Now both humans and mutants are studying in Zanlu's martial arts gym, and Charles also knows through certain channels that some people in the military have been trying to put pressure on Zanlu to drive him out of all mutants. In this case, if you want to avenge Eric, you will only push Zanlu and his martial arts to the side of the human government in the end. Charles understands this truth, and of course Eric also understands. He smiled bitterly and said, "I'm already like this, it doesn't matter if I take revenge or not. I'm tired too, so I'll retire like this. The mutant fraternity, leave it to Ruiwen. She wants to try to get out of the third mutant the way, then let her try it. My road of magnetic field is wrong, let her lead the mutants down the road of Valkyrie, maybe it can really change everything." Seeing Eric say this, Charles breathed a sigh of relief and sighed, "Eric, it would be great if you can see it. Mutants now need Zanlu and his martial arts. He cannot be pushed over to the side of the enemy. You can live in seclusion here in the future. We have nothing to chat, catch up on the old days, and spend a while in leisure. I have to make a phone call with my subordinates to clarify the matter, otherwise she may not be able to take over the Brotherhood smoothly." Eric sighed. Things have come to this point, it doesn't matter whether you can see it or not. It is impossible for a crippled Magneto to continue to be the leader of the Brotherhood of Mutants. Chin took out her mobile phone and dialed the number according to what Eric said, but Eric was surprised to learn that Ruiwen had already run away. She not only ran away by herself, but also abducted some less able children and ran away together. Neither Eric nor Charles were surprised that Raven escaped from house arrest. Ruiwen is a top infiltrator, and naturally she is also very talented in escaping things. But she actually escaped from the Brotherhood, and she kidnapped some burdens to escape together. The implication in this surprised the two of them. It seems that our little sister finally has her own idea. Charles sighed with a smile. And Eric snorted angrily. Ruiwen's defection was simply a huge blow to his theory. Even his closest little sister betrayed him, one can imagine how unpopular he is. Eric stopped his men from pursuing Raven and announced that Raven and the defector would be expelled from the Brotherhood. Then, he informed his subordinates by phone that he was going to retire and gave up the position of leader of the Brotherhood, allowing them to select a new leader by themselves. After that, he doesn't care. Because the Brotherhood itself is a system of the weak and the strong. If Ruiwen is in the top position, with his relationship with Ruiwen and Ruiwen's seniority over the years, it will not be difficult to control the Brotherhood of Mutants. But now that Ruiwen has made up his mind to take a new path, it is better to let the group of rebellious warriors decide who is the new leader, than to designate one and then cause civil strife. On Ruiwen's side, found that the pursuers behind him had all been withdrawn, so they knew it must be Eric who had spoken, so they called some of their friends in the fraternity to inquire, and they know the cause and effect. Although she didn't know why Eric stepped down as the leader of the Brotherhood, it must have something to do with her new master. She had no idea that Zanlu had already amputated all of Eric's limbs, otherwise she would not know if she would rush to fight her new master on impulse. But now that there is no problem with safety, she began to think about how to take the road of Valkyrie. It is necessary to learn art from a teacher, but the first test is very sad. None of the people she brought out can speak Chinese. Therefore, she specially found a remote and safe area, settled everyone down first, and then found a Chinese teacher for them. She is an ace spy, and she knows Chinese, but she has to go back to the martial arts hall to study, otherwise, if she fails the second test, no matter how good her plan is, all previous efforts will be in vain. It is very difficult to find a Chinese teacher among the rare mutants, and she cannot fully trust ordinary human Chinese teachers. After much deliberation, she had no choice but to ask another good brother for help. Of course Charles was willing to help, and even invited her to lead these people to X Academy, but after careful consideration, Raven still refused. Now that you have decided to take the third path, you cannot be influenced by the other two paths. Therefore, she only accepted the Chinese teacher sent by Charles, and declined other help. And her decision made Charles feel disappointed, and he was also very relieved. The little sister who had been following others had finally grown up. Ruiwen has tried to speed up as much as possible, but the establishment of a new organization requires a lot of trivial things, including the choice of base, the source of income for personnel, how to prevent the traces of the crowd from being detected by the enemy, and so on. Hurry up and hurry up. When Ruiwen returned to the martial arts gym again, more than a month had passed. During this period of time, another group of people successfully entered the realm of electric current. The current group of disciples are basically elites sent by various organizations. They are of good quality, have a clear purpose, practice hard and conscientiously, and basically have started to learn one after another. In the past week, more than a dozen beginner disciples came out in a sudden blowout, including Emil Bronsky, Army, Justin Hammer, Hammer Military Industrial Group, Grant Ward, Snake and Shield, Sky, Rising Tide Organization, and a group of familiar and unfamiliar names. But it doesn't matter, as time goes by, there will be more and more disciples in the future. As the only martial god level sect in the Marvel world, Zhang Lu is ashamed to call himself a big sect without 1,000 and 8,000 beginner disciples. Of course, for Zhang Lu, quantity is not important, but quality is important. Whether you can pass the magnetic field rotation is the most important thing. After crossing the level of magnetic field rotation, whether it can reach the limit state of 50 heavens is also in doubt. Zhang Lu felt that, apart from the protagonists and main villains, it might not be easy for ordinary people to reach the 50 heavens. Ordinary people like Lao Wang may be able to step into the realm of magnetic field rotation, but if they want to be promoted to the 25th heaven or higher level, they may only be possible after the earth is magnetized. As more and more people joined the major organizations, the importance of the fourth disciple Wang Yunxiang also dropped, and there were no organizations to continue to win him over. Lao Wang didn't care about it. He still practiced in the martial arts gym with peace of mind, and received allowances from his master regularly, living a happy life. He is so old, he sees everything clearly, and he doesn't fight for power and profit with those senior brothers who will later rise to the top. If someone wants to be a lecturer to gain prestige, he will give up his position and take the opportunity to be lazy. Anyone who wants to form a gang in the martial arts hall, he just watches, does not join any party, and does not offend any party. Now those ordinary disciples in the martial arts hall have become the key targets of major organizations. Even many new disciples are immediately dragged by senior brothers and sisters to eat, drink, and participate in parties as soon as they become apprentices, to establish the foundation of their relationship first, and then to seriously help them teach and study. Basically, in about a month, based on the performance of the new disciple's attitude towards martial arts, one can roughly judge whether this person is likely to pass the entrance examination, and then start the second round of wooing. All kinds of temptations and wishes were poured down one after another, and basically few people could survive this round of sugar-coated shells. And these ordinary people have gained such great benefits, and naturally become role models for the people around them to learn from, thus attracting more ordinary people to come to learn from teachers. The original martial arts hall can no longer hold it, but fortunately, the master of the martial arts hall has money, so he directly bought all the buildings within a few hundred meters around him, flattened them and incorporated them into the martial arts hall. Now not only the business of the Chinese training classes around the Wugwan is getting better and better, but even the salaries of Chinese teachers in New York City have risen accordingly. Even many universities have specially set up Chinese courses to attract more foreign students to study at the school. As for Professor X, he also claimed to strengthen the training internally, and sent the first batch of mutant students here to learn from Zhang Lu. Ruiwen moved a little slower, and only sent the two children who are the fastest learners of Chinese. However, she also succeeded in getting started and became a formal disciple. Ruiwen immediately left the martial arts gym after obtaining the status of official disciple, returned to the base, and began to teach intensively with the Chinese teacher, trying to lead everyone on the road of martial arts as soon as possible. Pepper also got started smoothly. She had a lot of work and immediately returned to work at the Stark Group, but the old Obadiah still insisted on his own opinion and refused to come, which made Tony very helpless. The upgrade plan of S.H.I.E.L.D. finally failed. Peter wasted a lot of time and energy, defeated one after another super criminals, rescued countless people in distress, and made the name of superhero Thor more resounding. However, his realm has not improved at all. Sharon Carter's level is low, so the progress is not small. She has already been able to use 200,000 volts of current, but those younger juniors who stayed in the martial arts gym and practiced, some of them caught up, and the speed of progress was not inferior to Sharon. Especially Orlo, the Storm Girl. She was originally a magician, able to manipulate the celestial phenomena in nature, and thunder and lightning are one of them. So she made rapid progress after getting started, and now she has come from behind, reaching the realm of 500,000 volts of current. In the learning competition between humans and mutants, it is obvious that mutants enter the country faster than ordinary people. Even if the talent of mutants is not related to lightning, it often interacts with Qigong when practicing the ultimate infinite Qigong, and promotes each other to accelerate the practitioner's progress. And practicing Qigong can allow mutants to have a more precise grasp of their own bodies and abilities. In the earliest days, there were often some mutants whose abilities were out of control, and it was necessary to rely on Orlo's understanding of them to suppress them. But after practicing for a month, the abilities of all the mutants have never lost control. This good news made Charles laugh from ear to ear every day. This also stimulated Charles and Ruiwen to pay more attention to Chinese teaching, and even suspended many other subjects to focus on Chinese learning. Now Charles personally gives a Chinese class to the students every day. Yu Reading www.yuakanshu.com and chat with my old friend Eric to help him relieve his boredom and live a leisurely life. It seems that everything is on the right track, and everything is developing in a good direction, but both of them know that the potential hidden dangers have never been eliminated, and sooner or later they will explode, and they don't know who will be blown up at that time. And what they have to do now is to delay the outbreak of this hidden danger as much as possible, so that the mutants can have more self-protection capabilities, attract more allies, control the scale of future losses, and so on. The fire couldn't be contained in the paper, and Ruiwen finally found out about Eric. She sneaked around the X-Academy secretly, and saw the scene of disabled limbs, wearing a prosthetic limb specially made for him by the Beast, sitting in a wheelchair, and sitting and drinking tea with Charles. The two old people, both sitting in wheelchairs, sat opposite each other, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. She hesitated for a long time, but finally turned and left without disturbing the two elder brothers. Charles and Eric turned their heads to look at Ruiwen's leaving back, looked at each other, said nothing, and continued to drink tea. After finishing the afternoon tea, Charles pushed his wheelchair, said goodbye and left. He still had classes in the afternoon. Eric sat alone in the wheelchair, staring at the heavy snow outside the window, dazed. After an unknown period of time, he was a little thirsty. He didn't use the high-tech prosthetic hand, but just looked down at the purple gold teapot on the table. The teapot automatically floated into the air, filling up the tea in the white porcelain teacup without any spillage. He opened his mouth again, and the porcelain teacup flew up, and after putting the tea into his mouth, it fell back to its original position, perfectly. This can't go on like this anymore. More and more mutants have joined that martial arts gym. If things go on like this, the power of mutants will become stronger and stronger, and the threat will become greater. Colonel Stryker roared loudly with, "Then what are you going to do? Send troops to capture those mutants?" General Tarbert asked behind the desk. "Why not?" Stryker asked back. "Because we have to consider Zhan Lu's reaction to this matter. He is an outsider and doesn't care about mutants. Those mutants are terrorists. Do we need to look at other people's eyes when we catch terrorists?" Stryker became more and more dissatisfied with the weakness of the military. "Do you think Professor X is a fool? Those who dare to go there to learn from teachers are all innocent children with no criminal records. They can have a criminal record," Stryker pointed out. "Don't show off the fake stuff. Professor X has been watching over there. If he wants to find clues, he will definitely find them. You understand what I mean? Mutants. They're all a bunch of monsters." Stryker turned in a circle. "Why didn't you force Zhan Lu to drive away all the mutants? You think we haven't tried it? Tarbert glared at him angrily. I've tried all kinds of coercion and temptation, but he won't accept it. He killed more than a dozen policemen who went to test him on the spot. This is a guy who has no respect for the law in his heart. Unless there is a war, there is no way for any small means. Then let's go to war. He killed so many policemen and let the news out, no one in the Federation would dare to protect him. Stryker was overjoyed and shouted excitedly. Do you think I don't want to? Tarbert also yelled, but now many organizations send people to study with him, and no one can use force against them until they get what they want. Move the whole body, the military cannot act recklessly. Politics. Stryker slapped the table angrily. Then how long do I have to wait? Wait until all the organizations have reached the state of magnetic field rotation. At that time, Zanlu will be useless. Tarbert's eyes were full of murderousness. Okay, when the time comes, I can send people to act together. Stryker volunteered. You, forget it. Tarbert glanced at him, and said in a strange way, the strength of your mutant men is completely behind the times. You'd better find out how powerful the magnetic field rotation is. Hi, and then make a decision. After coming out of the Pentagon, Stryker went to visit some old friends with a sullen face, and obtained the video data of Peter's weapon test that day. After watching the entire video and the accompanying expert evaluation, Stryker fell into silence. He was deeply shocked by the force displayed by Peter, which was simply beyond his imagination. He also coveted this power, but he couldn't send people to study like other organizations. Because his capable subordinates are all mutants who have been brainwashed by him, such as Death Girl, once they leave his side, it is hard to say whether they will lose control. Although there are some ordinary fighters under his command, the quality of these people is not the slightest difference from the elites selected by those big organizations. And, most importantly, he doesn't have that much time. Now that some people in various organizations have reached the threshold of magnetic field rotation, what is lacking now may be the potential explosion in some life and death battles. If he does not have enough manpower after the goals of all parties are achieved, he will definitely not be able to participate in the ensuing war of surrender. He felt a little regretful. The intelligence work was too biased towards the mutant side, and this martial arts gym was left out. If he had known earlier, and sent people over to steal the secrets of the martial arts hall as early as other organizations, he would not have been so passive. Such a powerful force is suitable for exterminating mutants. But it's too late to say anything now, there is no medicine for regret in this world. He carefully studied the relevant information and finally found an expedient solution. Because there are more and more people who have succeeded in getting started with current promotion, and the beginner disciples who used to be rare are now rotten, and there are fewer organizations competing for it. After all, organizations with a bit of brains basically already have some disciples who have been cultivated by themselves to promote the level of electric current. It is completely unnecessary to recruit from ordinary people. Only those like Stryker, who missed the best time and didn't send people over, now have the need to recruit from ordinary people. Stryker was very aggressive this time, specially approving a large amount of funds to cover all the introductory disciples in the martial arts gym who have not yet signed a contract with the organization. With this group of introductory disciples from ordinary people, his strength immediately changed drastically. Stryker is a ruthless person. He is ruthless to himself, to his own son, and even more ruthless to outsiders. He can transform his son Master Illusion into a tool man. He can transform Wolverine and Death Girl, and of course he will not show any mercy to these newly recruited men. He manipulated number 143 transformed by Master Illusion, and dealt a ruthless blow to this group of rookies. First, mix various hypnotic drugs in the food, then let them fight each other in the name of military training, and then use illusions to provoke them, increasing the gap and hatred between them. Small frictions become contradictions, and contradictions become major conflicts. First there were quarrels, then scolding each other, then escalated into tit-for-tat, and finally turned into armed confrontation. Although this group of people are all current promoting realms and have strong combat power, they are all from ordinary backgrounds and have no experience at all, so they are easily manipulated by him. A dozen or so disciples in the current promoting realm, under Stryker's intentional instigation, fought with each other endlessly every day. At the beginning of the conflict, everyone was relatively restrained. After all, they were all ordinary people, and they had never killed anyone. But under the control of drugs and illusions, everyone gradually lost control. After the first person died, everyone went crazy. A huge desert base was smashed into ruins by a group of little supermen fighting in a scuffle. After paying 1/3 of their lives, the last survivors finally calmed down. Although the process was very tragic, the result was very good. The 10 people who survived all successfully stepped into the realm of magnetic field rotation. Stryker suppressed the ecstasy in his heart, became furious, scolded the survivors, and then threatened them. If he didn't want to go to the military court and be shot, he could only obediently obey his orders. This group of ordinary people had no idea how strong their own force was, so they were easily controlled by Stryker, obediently becoming Stryker's lackeys. Colonel Stryker is a crazy guy. He went mad after his wife died. He believes that his premature mutant son killed his wife, so he hates mutants. In order to eliminate mutants, he can transform his son into a tool, which is simply not something that ordinary people can do. A stable political system will have a lot of concerns and will consider all kinds of problems, but a lunatic will never consider these. The military also has many radical generals who oppose mutants, but they are rational and will weigh the pros and cons when doing things, but Colonel Stryker will not. In the past, Stryker was unable to destroy mutants, and his strength was not strong enough to do so. In the film and television series, when he finds a way to destroy the mutants in one fell swoop, he sends the controlled mutants to assassinate the president and other federal politicians to promote his plan. Now, he has 10 magnetic field rotation experts, and his strength has jumped to the top of each organization in one fell swoop, so he can no longer hold back. He decided to start his own project. He can't move the Ultimate Infinity Hall now, otherwise the military won't be able to protect him, but X Academy can. He wants to destroy X Academy. Originally, the Brotherhood of Mutants was the most suitable target. After all, this is a well-known terrorist group, and there is no need to find a reason. And Magneto didn't know what went wrong. He had already stepped down and gave up his position to someone else. Without the deterrence of Magneto, the difficulty of destroying the Brotherhood of Mutants was immediately reduced by half. But also because of this, the whereabouts of the Brotherhood of Mutants are hard to find, and the concealment is very good. Ruiwin's base was discovered, but there were only 3 or 2 kittens there. The number was too small, and they were all old, weak, sick and disabled. Moreover, it is not yet within the territory of the Federation, and the use of force still needs to consider diplomatic issues. Therefore, X Academy is the best choice. There are a lot of mutants out there, and force value is not an issue now. Most importantly, catching Professor X may solve all mutants once and for all. With the help of the brainwave enhancement machine, use the number 143 experimental body to manipulate Professor X to kill all the mutants in an instant, and then he can fulfill his long-cherished dream, to purify the world. This plan has been made for a long time, but it has never been able to be implemented, because he is only a colonel, not a general, and he cannot bypass the Pentagon to use force against X Academy. Even if he gave the order, any military general would be able to relieve him of his military power. Originally, in his plan, he planned to find an opportunity to provoke the president and other politicians to hate mutants, but now it is useless. Since the military can compromise with Zonlu for political reasons, it can naturally compromise with himself, who has 10 magnetic field fighters, for the sake of balance. Eliminating mutants is his lifelong dream, and now that the opportunity has come, he might as well do it first. As for the consequences, the big deal is to slowly argue with those politicians. After the plan was made, he began to arrange the attack plan. In the entire X Academy, there is only one threat, that old disabled Professor X. Stryker has been studying mutants for the rest of his life, and Professor X, one of the most powerful giants among mutants, certainly has a more in-depth study. But he is too extreme. He can't see Professor X's efforts for peace, he only sees the power and threat of Professor X's ability. Aiming at Professor X, he has made several big boxes of various plans, most of which are aimed at Professor X's fragile body, and now these plans are finally useful. That night, in the dead of night, everything was silent, and the children of Academy X had already fallen asleep. Stryker took most of them and landed far away from the Academy, and then the 10 magnetic field rotating powerhouses, shrouded in lightning, rushed towards X Academy at full speed. Stryker, on the other hand, led a large force and quickly followed up in an armored vehicle. In the original film and television drama, Stryker used Magneto as bait to transfer Professor X into the trap, and then led people to sneak in for a sneak attack at night. But now the force in his hands is strong enough, there is no need to be sneaky anymore. Charles in the dream woke up suddenly. Just as he woke up all the teachers and informed them to be alert, he heard loud rumbling noises coming from outside, getting closer. These raiders didn't go through the door at all, but directly passed through the wall to transfer the property, demolishing whatever they saw, and came directly to his bedroom. His eyes blurred, and the Nightcrawler appeared. "Professor, I'll take you away." Just as Nightcrawler picked him up, the opposite wall exploded. A huge shock wave sent the two of them flying, and a fully armed soldier appeared in front of them. Nightcrawler barely activated his ability in midair, teleporting the two of them out. But the senses of those with strong magnetic field rotation are extremely sensitive, comparable to radar, and they immediately found their footholds and then turned around and killed them. Nightcrawler hurriedly teleported again, and teleported the two of them to Cyclops Scott's bedroom. As soon as they landed, Scott was punched by another fighter and flew away. Seeing Professor X appearing, the soldier immediately took out a jar from his waist, opened it and threw it at Charles. A large amount of colorless and odorless gas came out of the jar. It was a powerful anesthetic specially prepared for Professor X. Professor X immediately launched a mental attack on that soldier, but the soldier was wearing a special helmet. Although it could not completely eliminate the influence of his ability, it weakened most of the power, and the rest of the mental shock only made the soldier shake flash. Professor X also has an augmented helmet, but this attack came too suddenly, and his helmet was in the cabinet. Without the helmet booster, his mental shock cannot break through the opponent's special helmet and cause effective damage to the enemy. Of course, this is also related to the fact that the Comer is too strong. Otherwise, if it was an ordinary person, even with a weakened attack, he would have already fainted to the ground. The wall behind him burst open, and the soldier just now chased after him. Nightcrawler wanted to continue teleporting, but only felt dizzy for a while. His body shook, his ability failed to activate, and he fell to the ground with Professor X. Before the coma passed, he vaguely saw Scott being pinned face down by another fighter, the pair of Cyclops, who had no effect. The battle ended very quickly. By the time Stryker arrived with the large troops, all the teachers had been knocked down, and they didn't even have a chance to report to Chin and Orlo, who were leading the team in the martial arts gym. Standing at the gate of X Academy, Stryker laughed excitedly when he saw the soldiers coming with the captives. From today onwards, there will be no Xavier Academy for gifted boys. Monsters should stay in cages. Haha. Chapter 91. Everyone, go in and start arresting. Arrest and take away all mutant monsters, and kill anyone who dares to resist. A large number of soldiers were fully armed, rushed into the college with tranquilizer guns, and began to arrest them. Some older mutant children began to try to use their abilities to fight. In the face of those who are weak, this kind of confrontation is useless, and the soldiers easily suppress them. In the face of those with slightly stronger abilities, ordinary soldiers would start to call for support, and in a short while, a thunderbolt flew over, easily knocking down the rebels. Stryker is becoming more and more satisfied with these subordinates who use the magnetic field rotation ability to fight. He stood at the door and looked at the mutant children who were knocked down and sent out one after another in the courtyard. He was full of ambition, especially the brainwave enhancement machine escorted out by 2 magnetic field fighters, which was the core key item of the plan. Stryker excitedly went up to meet him, and then he didn't take a few steps. Suddenly his eyes blurred, and a thunderous explosion sounded into his ears, and the air wave directly rushed him somersault. He reluctantly opened his eyes to look, only to see a magnetic field warrior whom he had placed high hopes on, was beaten into 2 pieces by the waist, and was lying on the ground, howling. And the most important brainwave strengthening machine has been broken into several pieces in the impact just now. No. My machine, my plan. The dream was destroyed on the spot at the moment when it was about to be realized, and Stryker couldn't help crying. Humans, you all deserve to die. A human stick was suspended in the air, looking at the mutant children who were like livestock and thrown into the truck with an angry face. Magneto. Stryker was taken aback, but immediately saw that all the limbs of Magneto disappeared. Although he didn't know what caused it, it didn't prevent him from making a correct judgment. Take advantage of his illness and kill him. Get rid of him. He's already a cripple. Stryker stepped back while giving orders to the magnetic field fighters. Although there is no Magneto in his plan, since Magneto has already appeared, it can be solved altogether. Among his vehicles are special degaussing weapons developed for Magneto. These weapons have been proven in previous battles. They are not very effective against others, but they are accurate against Magneto. Unlike Stryker, those magnetic field fighters can tell at a glance that the enemy is also using the magnetic field rotation force. And they have already felt the threat from Magneto, the guy who can fly. The magnetic field turns the realm. It takes at least 10 days to do it. The remaining 9 people couldn't care less about the others. They mobilized their strength with all their might, and stepped forward to encircle and beat them. Go to hell. The ultimate Emperor Leg. Old cripple. Eat the dust. The ultimate endless palm. Take the move. The ultimate lightning hand. Magneto spewed fire from his eyes, took a deep breath, changed his body from being vertical to parallel to the ground, aimed at a charging magnetic field warrior, and suddenly rotated his body around the straight line of the spine as the axis. Let's meet my new way of fighting. Rotating cannon. Before he finished speaking, his body rushed out, colliding with the warrior's attack at a speed of several Mach. Head to palm hit each other, a huge force exploded, and scattered the other besieging people. After everyone stood still, they realized that the right half of the magnetic field warrior who had received Eric's head hammer just now had been knocked out. On the other side, Magneto adjusted his figure again, and aimed his body at another magnetic field warrior. The guy was so frightened that he hurriedly stepped forward, trying to dodge, while yelling to remind his companions. Don't fight him head on, his realm is too much higher than ours. Whoever has practiced whirlwind break and transformation Jew, hurry up and give me a top. Eric suffers because he has lost his limbs, and he doesn't know martial arts. The rotating cannon he uses is still his own attack method that he can't move these days, and he has figured it out. It is very rough. And several of his enemies have learned the magic skills of the ultimate Wuliang school, and every move has great power. Although he was high enough to kill one of the enemies with one head, but his head felt like a mess when he was hit by the opponent's heavy palm. He shook his head, adjusted his body shape, and planned to continue to attack, but they all learned how to behave, and no one would fight him head-on, either using footwork to dodge, or using effort to avoid his edge. Eric attacked several times in a row, but all failed. In the midst of anxiety, there was a sudden noise, and a group of ordinary soldiers rushed over with special guns against Magneto. If it was Magneto in the past, with so many special weapons, he might have to escape for his life, but now. Hee. Eric sneered a few times, adjusted his figure, and rushed towards the group of soldiers. He doesn't have Charles's soft-heartedness, and he doesn't have the moral cleanliness of superheroes who don't kill. For him, all human beings can be killed. The soldiers confidently pulled the trigger on Eric, and were surprised to find that Bayou Lark's degaussing weapon actually failed. Under the terrified eyes of the soldiers, Eric plunged into the queue of soldiers. Amidst the loud noise, all the soldiers of a small group were reimbursed at once. Stryker, who was directing behind, had a sudden heart attack, and immediately realized that the current Eric was no longer the previous Magneto, and he must be using the power of magnetic field rotation. When he first got Peter's weapon test information, he noticed that the degaussing weapon had no effect on Peter's magnetic field ability. Later, after obtaining the magnetic field fighter, he conducted a special test, and it turned out that the magnetic field fighter is also not affected by the degaussing weapon. Regarding this phenomenon, he specifically consulted scientists, why the data show that the magnetic field generated around the magnetic field fighter is indeed a magnetic field, but why this magnetic field can have an effect on non-metal. The scientist explained a lot to him, but he didn't understand it. He only remembered one conclusion. The rotation of the magnetic field produces not only a magnetic field, but also a force field, which can have an effect on non-metals. As for why the previous Magneto could not do this, scientists said that the nickname must be wrong. Now that he discovered that the degaussing weapon also had no effect on Magneto, he immediately realized that Magneto's abilities had changed. There is only one other magnetic field warrior who can fight against the magnetic field warrior. He hastily ordered to the remaining 8 magnetic field fighters, kill him. Otherwise we will all die. If you keep it for a long time, you will lose. In the continuous dodge, another magnetic field warrior finally failed to dodge, and was bombarded by Eric's rotating cannon. Between life and death, there is great terror. The unlucky magnetic field warrior let out a roar, squeezed all the vitality out of his body, and raised his palms to greet him. The magnetic field rotates, the fifth heaven. The ultimate limitless palm. Although the gap between the fifth heaven and the 10th heaven is not small, it is not insurmountable. Whether it is the power flow or the complete realm, it is a way for the magnetic field fighters to leapfrog the enemy. These magnetic field fighters, with complete limbs, are definitely stronger than Eric, who hit his head in terms of power flow alone. What's more, what they have learned are all superb martial arts, which are more effective than Eric's own rotating cannon. In the complete realm, there are also some advantages. But the problem is that these people are all from ordinary backgrounds. Although they have superb martial arts, the time to study them is too short. Moreover, the complete state not only depends on martial arts moves, but also depends on the degree of comprehension of magnetic fields, combat experience, and many other aspects. And for Magneto, who awakened the ability to manipulate magnetic fields at an early age and has been fighting for half his life, whether it is the degree of comprehension of magnetic fields or combat experience, this group of rookies is completely inadequate. Although Eric took the wrong path before, when he set foot on the right path, his progress was far faster than ordinary people. When neither the power flow nor the complete realm can surpass the opponent, then the fifth heaven will face the 10th heaven, and there will only be one result: a dead end. Amidst the loud noise, this magnetic field warrior followed in the footsteps of his previous companion, and was crushed by Eric's head on his right arm, then smashed his chest into pieces, and died on the spot. Originally, these magnetic field fighters were recruited by ordinary people. Although they have tempered their will and are much stronger than ordinary people through the process of martial arts training, they have not undergone a qualitative change in essence. When the wind is going smoothly, naturally no problems can be found, but once they encounter a huge crisis, the cowardice and fear hidden deep in their hearts will emerge. Before they were in the desert base, the reason why they fought to the end was entirely due to the catalysis of the medicine in the food and the phantom control of the number 143 experimental body, otherwise they would have collapsed long ago. After killing people and seeing blood, their mentality has improved a lot, so they didn't collapse and run away after the first companion was killed by Eric. But after the death of 3 people, the critical point is finally approaching. Generally speaking, the ancient army would collapse when the battle loss rate reached 10%, and then more people died of trampling than those killed in battle. The armies led by famous generals can only increase this ratio to 20%, 30%. In modern times, due to ideological construction and other reasons, this ratio often reaches more than 50%, and there are even some who do not collapse until the last soldier. As for these magnetic field fighters, they have not undergone long-term military training and brainwashing, so it is not easy to persist until the battle damage is 30% before collapsing. Stryker has been through battles for a long time, and he is very clear about these things. As soon as he saw the faces of other people, he immediately realized it. He cursed secretly, and quickly reminded everyone, don't hit his head hard, attack his limbs, his wound hasn't healed yet, let him bleed dry. He was afraid that this group of cowardly magnetic field fighters would leave him behind, so he fled before the battle, and warned loudly. It's useless to run away, you can't run away from him, he uses flying, much faster than your 2 legs. Besides, if you run away, you will go to a court-martial. It's still a dead end. The only way is to kill him. After killing him, everyone will have credit. By then you will be at least the rank of major, I promise. His yelling caught Eric's attention. As soon as Eric turned his head, he aimed the attack direction of the next rotating cannon at Stryker. Stryker's face changed, and he quickly shouted, Charles and the other mutants are here, if you have the guts to bump into them. Let me see who among them can survive your blow. Eric hesitated, the fighter plane was lost, and the other 7 magnetic field fighters aimed at the wounds on his limbs and began to attack. The healing speed of the strong magnetic field is super fast, and Eric's wound has already healed. But even if it is healed, the wound site itself is also a dense vascular network because of the self-regulation of the limbs. The crowd intentionally avoided the direction of his head and wandered around to besiege. As the number of attacks increased, they gradually mastered the key to the siege, and their cooperation became more tacit. Under Eric's pressure, these people broke through one after another, which further exacerbated his disadvantage. After repeated sieges, Eric was finally worn out and his wounds were bleeding. Although Eric sealed the blood vessel with his luck, it added to his burden. Not long after, his defense was broken again and another wound was injured. The tiger falls in Pyongyang and is bullied by dogs. Eric roared again and again, but suffering from the lack of limbs, the attacks he sent out could only hit the empty space again and again. He has considered retreating. If it is the former Magneto, can run away if he can't beat it. It's no big deal. There will always be a chance to get back in the future. But now Eric, there is no way to just walk away. Because he was frustrated before, he could come back to take revenge again, but now he has no limbs. Even if he leaves here and starts again next time, will the result be better than this? Now Stryker has 10 magnetic field fighters in his hands. Next time he comes again, he will probably meet 50 or 100 magnetic field fighters. He and Stryker have also been sworn enemies for many years, and he deeply knows what will happen if the mutants fall into his hands. The old friend Charles and a group of mutant children are now in Stryker's hands. If he can't rescue people today, he probably won't be able to rescue them forever. He tried to be like those few magnetic field fighters, to explode his seeds, to improve his magnetic field rotation state and improve it. But it is a pity that these few scraps of firewood put too little pressure on him, and they can't let him improve his realm at all. Like a frog being boiled in warm water, Eric bled more and more. Finally, he couldn't hold on any longer, and was hit hard by someone, knocking him to the ground. Everyone was stunned for a moment, but then cheered loudly. A group of people hurried forward and made up several times heavily, and then injected Eric with various anesthetic drugs, carried the unconscious Eric into the car, and followed the ecstatic Stryker back home in triumph. High above the sky, in the stratosphere, Zhang watched the whole process silently, and after confirming that Eric was not dead, he turned and left with a smile. Eric, don't let me down. If you are successful, your cultivation method can be called Eric Dao, and it can be widely promoted. After the second male way, if you can open another way, you are also a master of a generation. You're ***** lunatic. I've told you that you shouldn't act rashly now, but you didn't listen to what I said, did you? Tarbert looked at Stryker standing in front of the desk and cursed. Although Stryker's plan was not fully completed, he also eradicated X Academy, one of the two major forces of mutants, and obtained a lot of materials. Now he is in a very good mood and doesn't care about being scolded by his boss. General, I didn't use the martial arts gym, I just sent the monsters from X Academy to where they should go. He said with a smile. Besides, the people who did it were all registered disciples of the martial arts hall, and even 3 of them died. Even if Zhang intervenes in this matter, he should be on the side of his named disciple. Then do you know how many contacts Professor Charles has expanded in Congress and the Senate over the years? He is not a poor man like Magneto, he is very rich, and in this country, if you have money, you will have friends. Powerful. Tarbert glared at his subordinates angrily, very dissatisfied with his reckless behavior. Stryker had been prepared for a long time, and said with a smile at the moment, friends gained with money will of course leave because of money. Only like-minded friends will not betray each other. Among the military and political circles, there are many voices who are dissatisfied with mutants. I believe they must be very satisfied with my work. Presumably they don't mind chatting with those friends that Professor Charles has made, and pay a price to let them change friends. Of course, I won't make it difficult for my friends. Although I lost a lot of people this time, I have gained a lot. Now I have 7 masters in the field of magnetic field rotation, and the highest is the 5th heaven. The lowest is Zhongtian. Whether it is a bodyguard or an instructor, there must be many people who are interested. Tarbert was surprised when he heard this. How did you do it? Stryker raised his eyebrows and said, it's very simple, a life and death battle. The real life and death fight is not the kind of training game you play. Tarbert hesitated and asked, how many people did you lose? Half. Tarbert took a deep breath, shook his head and refused. No, these people are all cronies and elites of various families, and they can't bear to waste it like this. Besides, it's only the 5th heaven, and if we have to go further, wouldn't we need more people? Actually, I think that you don't need to let the elites do this kind of thing at all, you can wash the sand with big waves. Stryker shrugged and said indifferently. Big waves wash the sand. Tarbert pondered for a while, before he said, this time the matter is like this, I will arrange people from the military to help you deal with the aftermath. But next time you dare to kill first and play later, be careful and I will send you off. Go to court-martial. After finishing speaking, he waved his hand and drove Stryker out. Everything was as Stryker thought. Although his behavior of cutting first and playing later angered the military, he was also a member of the military anyway. While scolding him, General Talbot also put all the pressure on him. Passed. Satisfied, he left the Pentagon and returned to his research base in Lake Akari Industrial Center, where there was still a lot of material waiting for him to organize a team for analysis and research. Of course, the most important thing is that the brainwave enhancement machine damaged by Eric must be repaired. This is the key to solving the problem once and for all. The news about Academy X was eventually found out by Chin and Orlo. Chin will report the situation of the students to Professor X every day. It is very happy for them to see the students' little progress every day. As a result, when Chin called Professor X to report this afternoon, he found that his phone couldn't get through. She tried to call other people's phones, but when everyone at X Academy couldn't get through, she knew something was wrong. At first, she was just worried that the signal of X Academy was cut off, so she returned to X Academy with Orlo, only to find that the academy was full of ruins and everyone disappeared. Now they panicked. Fortunately, they found signs of magnetic field rotation and fighting at the scene. This unique trace is the only one in the world. There is no doubt that the person who did it has learned it in the Ultimate Infinity Hall. And all the introductory disciples of the Ultimate Infinity Hall have rosters. At worst, if you check the rosters, you can always find clues. However, this requires the help of Zhan Lu, the owner of the museum. Fortunately, Zhan Lu has always been very talkative, and this is just a trivial matter, so don't worry about him refusing. The two immediately returned to the martial arts hall to meet Zhan Lu. Master, Professor Charles and the others are all missing, including the children in the college. We saw traces of magnetic field rotation at the scene, and the suspect is also in the martial arts hall. We want to take a look, get started with the roster of disciples, and investigate which faction did it. Chin hesitated for a moment, and then said, if necessary, I hope Master can help rescue him. Although Orlo is now in the realm of magnetic field rotation, but not long after Chin came here, it is only the realm of electric current. The number of enemies is unknown, and the level of realm is unknown, but they can defeat and take away the entire X Academy, and the two of them may not be safe. And if you can ask Master Zhanliu for help, Yu Reading www.uakanshu.com, that's a sure thing. Zhan Lu knew who did it, but he didn't want to say it. He intends to let Eric, the Magneto King, suffer and be tortured in every way, recognize himself in hell, break through the limit in one fell swoop, reshape the three views, break out of hell, and become a real magnetic field maniac. He didn't want to help, but the apprentice opened his mouth, and it wouldn't be appropriate not to agree, so he nodded and said, the roster is with your fourth brother, just go and check it yourself. When you need to use force, just call me. Just as Chin and Orlo were about to go out, suddenly a group of people from the martial arts gym came out of the crowd and stopped at the door. Master, this is a matter between humans and mutants. Master is an outsider, so it's better not to interfere with the affairs of the Earth. Oh, Emil, are you teaching me how to do things? Zhan Lu's face sank, very displeased. He really doesn't want to help get Eric out now, but that doesn't mean that others can dictate it. In particular, Emil Bronsky is still his apprentice. Master, disciple, this is also for your own good. X Academy secretly colluded with the terrorist Magneto, and was arrested by the military. After passing the trial, they will get the treatment they deserve. Considering the relationship between Master, so in the martial arts hall mutants, the military has not yet arrested them. Master is better off alone. Amir's expression was calm, and he talked eloquently, with threatening words, and he didn't take Zhan Lu, the Master, at all. He is also a strong magnetic field now, and he feels that he has nothing to learn from Zhan Lu, so of course he no longer takes this cheap master seriously. Zhan Lu had a killing intent in his heart, and wanted to make this guy into a human balloon. But thinking of his own purpose, Eric hasn't enlightened yet, so if he does it now, he's afraid that his preparations will come to naught. Looking at Emil and the disciples in the row behind him, who were obviously from the military faction, he sneered and said, "Hee hee, the conflict between humans and mutants, right? Let me be alone, right? Good, very good, very good. You guys all have this attitude, don't you?" A group of people stood behind Amir, silently, already expressing their attitude. "Mr. Zahn, the patience of the Federation is limited. I hope you don't think that you can do anything wrong with force." Amir stretched out his hand and transported the power of the magnetic field to his hand, and said in a demonstrative way, "Now you are not the only one who is strong in magnetic field rotation. I wonder if you understand the principle that ants kill elephants more often." Following his movements, the disciples behind him also mobilized the force of magnetic field or electric current, and began to put pressure on Zhanlu collectively. "Ha ha." Zhanlu laughed angrily, "It's really, really funny. Ha ha. Are you talking about crosstalk? Don't you think that the rotation of the magnetic field and the rotation of the magnetic field are the same thing?" Amir sneered and said, "We know that you are the 25th heaven of magnetic field rotation, much higher than ours. But as you said, the challenge of leapfrogging is not only based on the realm. We have all been trained by a technical team, and the power flow has been adjusted to the highest level. Moreover, we are all fighters, have been baptized in the battlefield, and have rich killing experience, which is far beyond what you, a martial arts coach, can match. More importantly," he suddenly pressed on his waist, and then the belt suddenly deformed and extended, forming a set of armor, wrapping his body. "This is a strong magnetic armor." Zhanlu was very surprised. Since Tony realized that this thing is a tasteless thing, he gave up this thing. Since then, he hasn't seen this thing again, but it turned out to be reappearing now. "Yes, although I don't know why Mr. Stark gave up such a good thing, but the Stark family is not the only military partner. This is a new version of the strong magnetic armor produced by Hanmer Military Industry." Emil was obviously very satisfied with this set of battle armor. He stretched out his hands and gently stroked the smooth surface of the battle armor, his eyes were full of obsession. The new strong magnetic armor has added some rare materials. Not only is it strong enough to sustain long-term battles, but it also has a very strong boost to the rotation of the magnetic field. Wearing this armor, I can also achieve 20 times the magnetic field rotation. The realm of heaven. Following his introduction, the military soldiers behind him also slapped their waists, covering their bodies with armor. When people from other organizations saw these battle armors and heard about the effectiveness of the battle armors, they were immediately tempted. What the military can get, they should be able to, but if they can't, they can buy it from the military with money. And Hanmer Military has a fart technology, most of which are plagiarized from Tony Stark. Since it is a waste product of Tony Stark, it means that this guy must have something better than this thing in his hands, and it is okay to make ideas on him. So, this is what you rely on to deceive your master and destroy your ancestors. Zhanlu grinned, his white teeth showing coldly. He had a smile on his face, but his eyes were cold and indifferent, looking at Emil and the others like a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Emil's heart shrank suddenly. Looking at Zhanlu's ruthless eyes, he suddenly realized that the information might be wrong. This guy, who is usually a good guy and has no murderous aura on him, may have killed more people than himself, an elite soldier. In this way, in terms of complete realm, our side may not have the upper hand. But as long as he thought of his own superiority in numbers and the terrifying increase of the strong magnetic armor doped with vibranium on his body, his confidence would immediately arise again. We didn't mean to violate the sect's rules, but what's going on now is just a matter between mutants and ordinary people. Mr. Zahn is from another world, so there's no need to get involved. Let's not talk about the mutants, let's just talk about the matter of you deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors. Whether you have violated the rules of the sect, it doesn't matter what you say, but what I say, heavy palm down. What elaborate calculations, what, Eric Road, he doesn't care about it anymore, he just wants to get rid of this group of scumbags who bully their masters and ancestors. Good time. The magnetic field rotates for 20 layers, the ultimate transformation formula, block it for me. Emil had been prepared for a long time, and immediately roared, urging the magnetic field to turn the power, and greeted him with a palm. The military soldiers behind him also jumped up and came up to beat him up. The magnetic field rotates, the 20 heavens, the ultimate chi, block it for me. The magnetic field rotates, 20 heavens, the ultimate whirlwind breaks, block it for me. The magnetic field rotates, 20 heavens, the ultimate emperor's leg, go to hell. The magnetic field rotates, the 20 heavens, the ultimate infinite palm, defeat me. A group of people are originally fighters, and they have practiced and cooperated many times in advance, and they immediately divide the work and cooperate. UU Reading www. Uakanshu. The person who should defend is responsible for defense, and the person who should attack is responsible for attack. Row upon row, no chaos at all. On the other hand, on Zan Lu's side, only Wang Yunxiang and Mystique Ruiwen rushed forward with the power of the magnetic field. Everyone else backed away one after another and stepped aside to watch the excitement, but no one came up to help. Even Qin and Orlo are hesitating whether to come up to help, worried that after offending the military, it will be more difficult to rescue Professor X, Cyclops and others. After all, compared to Charles and other old friends for many years, Zan Lu, a new friend, is not very close. Lao Wang's aptitude is not high, and after stepping into the realm of magnetic field rotation, it will be even more difficult to go up. In this level of melee, his martial arts at the level of the sky are simply impossible to use. Even if he wanted to help, he was powerless due to lack of strength, and was sent flying by a soldier with a slap. Mystique's idea is relatively simple: the military is always her enemy, no matter in the past or now. And she wants to lead the mutants on the road of martial arts, so she and Zan Lu are in the same group, and she can clearly distinguish between distant and distant relatives. However, she didn't have a strong magnetic armor booster, and she just looked like the magnetic field was rotating to the fifth heaven. She ended up a little better than old Wang, and her injuries were not that serious. Amidst the bang, the two sides officially collided. The martial arts hall is now overcrowded, so there is a distinction between inside and outside. On the outermost side are some ordinary disciples who have not yet started, and in the middle are disciples driven by electric current. Originally, the small courtyard of the martial arts hall was full of disciples at the level of magnetic field rotation. And this blow directly raised the martial arts hall to the ground, and all the disciples below the magnetic field rotation level died. Even disciples at the level of magnetic field rotation are seriously injured if they are affected by this kind of influence. Not all battles can be watched lively, and not all battles will not affect the onlookers. The group of people who were gloating and planning to watch the fun just now were all seriously injured and vomiting blood, and the weak ones simply died. The Battle of Valkyrie has always been AoE. After eating this, they didn't care about watching the excitement, tried their best to suppress the injuries in their bodies, and ran out like desperately. They are also strong in magnetic field rotation, and they know how powerful the battle is, but they are limited by their thinking. The war is on. This level of battle is no longer what they are qualified to observe up close. Mystique Ruiwen couldn't keep her figure anymore. She changed back to her original appearance, struggled to get up on the ground, and looked at the broken limbs and broken arms everywhere in the ruins outside, feeling devastated. Most of her newly established road to the martial god organization are old, weak, sick and disabled, and those who come here to learn from teachers are all carefully selected elites. She regretted it very much now. When someone stepped into the current propelled realm, she should take them back to the base, instead of being greedy for the magnetic field acceleration effect here and leaving them here, so that they were taken away by a bunch today. Fortunately, Ruiwen used to follow Magneto, and often saw the tragic scene of her comrades being killed by the military, so she quickly adjusted her mentality. She reached out to pick up the old Wang who was dying beside her, turned around and quickly fled to the distance. Looking at Ruiwen who was going away, Zhang Liukai lowered his head to look at the military soldiers who were stumbling around. The heavy blow just now made them feel uncomfortable. Although they were wearing battle armor and their combat strength had increased to 20 heavens, their physical fitness was not strengthened by the magnetic field, and they were still at the original realm level. The reason why they were able to vomit blood without being seriously injured was entirely because a small amount of vibration gold was mixed into these strong magnetic armors, which weakened the impact to a certain extent. Now you know why Tony discarded this unfinished strong magnetic armor, right? This is a chicken rib for abuse. Now that you understand, you can go to die. The magnetic field rotates, 25 heavens, the ultimate emperor's legs. You losers who deceived their masters and exterminated their ancestors, go to hell. Spreading his legs like a battle axe, he slammed heavily at the leading Emir. Block it together, otherwise we're all going to die. Emil's eyes were tearing apart, and he gave up his defense with a roar. At the moment of life and death, he clearly felt that his magnetic field rotation realm had once again made a breakthrough, reaching the realm of the 9 heavens. But the limit of the strong magnetic battle armor is the 20th heaven. Whether he is the 9th heaven or the 1st heaven, wearing the battle armor, he can only exert the combat power of the 20 heavens. The other fighters also crazily squeezed their own potential, and Zanlu started desperately. But the gap between each other's series is too large, and efforts are useless. The palm just now was blasted by Zanlu casually, it was useless and the flow of power was limited, but now this leg was blasted with the best technique of martial arts, the difference is not the same. Originally, everyone took over the previous slap, thinking that this time it would still be effective, and they could completely kill Zanlu with more people. But who knows, as soon as the two sides came into contact this time, they immediately felt that Zanlu's move was more than 10 times more powerful. The two sides were in a stalemate for only a moment, and Zanlu's legs seemed to be smashed, and all the blocking forces were directly blasted away, and he fell under heavy pressure. No, amid the desperate wailing of everyone, they suddenly saw that the strong magnetic vibrating gold armor they relied on for protection was easily torn apart by the chi driven by heavy feet, and then break their bodies in two. Ah, help, no, master, I was wrong, please forgive me. Forgive me, master, I don't want to come either, the general forced me to come. The person who was hit in the front died on the spot, but the person who was rubbed on the side only had his limbs broken and his abdomen cut open. If he was sent to the hospital in time, he might still survive. All their beliefs had been destroyed by Zanlu's blow, and they were already terrified. They knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Zanlu, hoping to spare their lives. Zanlu frowned, looking at their ugly appearance. He knew that they were useless, and it would be difficult for them to make progress in this life. He was determined to kill them all, but then he thought that the Eric Road he had done before didn't know if it would work, maybe he should add more samples. If you can't be an experimental group, you can be a control group. Thinking of this, he stretched out his hand, and a bolt of lightning flashed, helping those injured to stop the bleeding. These people thought they had been forgiven by Zanlu, and they were overjoyed immediately, kowtowing like garlic. Thank you, master. From now on, the disciple will do whatever the master asks the disciple to do, and he must not dare to violate it. Master, don't worry, besides us, there are not many masters in magnetic field rotation in the military. In the future, we will help master lift up all the generals above, and then get master a 6-star general to do it. How can a 6-star general be enough? Master is so powerful, he is enough to be president. Zanlu was even more displeased when he saw their ugliness. This group of people kept looking at his face, seeing his displeasure, quickly shut up and looked at Zanlu with trepidation, for fear of offending him. A bunch of trash. How many times have I said this? The core of magnetic field rotation lies in will. It's about the will. Do you understand? If the will is strong enough, you can burst into battle and fight against adversity. Begging for mercy is useless. Can begging for mercy keep you from dying? Ha! Zanlu stretched out his hand and shattered the limbs of one of them, turning into a human stick. He stopped the bleeding and threw it aside. Pain, hatred, anger, sadness, self-blame, regret, these emotions can motivate you to continue to become stronger, you have to be extreme enough to do it. Since you can't do it yourself, let me help you. In front of everyone, he began to make human sticks, one by one. Seeing this scene, the group of people were terrified, and they fled away regardless of the injuries on their bodies. But they can't fly, and their injuries are not serious. Some of them have lost their legs. Where can they escape? They could only be attacked by Zanlu one by one. But even if it was so exciting, none of them dared to muster up the courage to resist. Zanlu looked at the human sticks, all over the floor, sighed, and gave up on them. It seems that it can only be used as a control group. The power of the first blow was mediocre, it only flattened a few hundred meters around the martial arts hall, and there were not many casualties. However, The power of the second blow has surpassed that of a normal equivalent nuclear bomb, and within several miles around, it was destroyed by the shock wave. Buildings collapsed, the ground crumbled, and many people were killed or injured. The mushroom cloud rising in place can be clearly seen throughout New York. Anyone with common sense, when they see a mushroom cloud, their first reaction must be a nuclear bomb. But in fact, mushroom clouds are not exclusive to nuclear bombs. A mushroom cloud is a cloud of smoke and dust characteristic of a massive explosion. Whether it is a nuclear explosion or a conventional explosion, high temperature and high pressure heat the air around the explosion center in a very short period of time. The high temperature air and a large amount of dust stirred up by the shock wave rise rapidly under the action of the explosive force and buoyancy, and it is easy to form a mushroom-shaped mushroom cloud. It's just that ordinary bombs are less powerful and often fail to achieve this effect, so most people still regard the mushroom cloud as a symbol of a nuclear explosion. A nuclear explosion in a place like New York immediately scared the people crazy, and they ran out like desperately. But the more chaotic, the more accidents occur, and various traffic accidents occur frequently. Usually, the traffic police will come to solve the problem, but now the traffic police are also busy running, so they don't have time to deal with traffic accidents. But fortunately, unless you are killed on the spot, or a simple collision or other accident, everyone will pretend that it didn't happen and just keep running away. If anyone is unlucky and gets hit, the driver won't even stop and just runs over. The car in the back also pretended not to see it, and just pushed down on the accelerator, causing another secondary injury. If the vehicle breaks down on the road, it is called a real pit. Leaving the car and running directly, or robbing a car on the spot, this is the most efficient way. But when everyone did this, the traffic was paralyzed, and the smart people were all trapped and had to run out on two legs. Fortunately, in New York, there are many disasters, whether it is the Hulk or the natural disaster of the tsunami, they have all gone through it. The official response plans are various and experienced, and they are not in a hurry for this unexpected situation. While calling for military support, they dispatched manpower to organize the evacuation of the crowd and rescue work in an orderly manner. The instigator had already found Lao Wang and Rui Wen, who were seriously injured, and took them to a 5-star hotel to heal their injuries quietly. As for those dead disciples, Zanlu didn't even take a look at them, a group of guys with ulterior motives, dead counted. Only those who are still on his side at the critical moment are considered as their own. Lao Wang was seriously injured, but for those with strong magnetic field rotation, as long as they didn't die on the spot, the remaining injuries would only depend on the length of time. After Zanlu used the ultimate boundless qigong to help Pharaoh Yungong heal his injuries, he found that Pharaoh was blessed by misfortune, walked a circle between life and death, and the magnetic field turned the realm, and finally reached the 5th heaven. Given his age and aptitude, it was really not easy. After confirming that Lao Wang was safe and sound, Zanlu withdrew his hand, stood up, and called the hotel to deliver food, before Rui Wen asked, "What are your plans for the future?" "Let Tony pay for it, rebuild a martial arts gym, and continue to open the door to teach students," Zanlu said disapprovingly. "You killed so many members of the military just now, and this time at least tens of thousands of civilians died because of you. The indirect casualties and economic losses caused are countless. You don't want to run away, but you actually plan to continue to run the martial arts school?" Rui Wen asked with a smile on her face. "First of all, I am a warrior. It is only right and proper for me to kill people, and I deserve to die." Zanlu sat on the sofa and began to reverse Rui Wen's inherent misconceptions. Secondly, Emil's group of guys dared to deceive their masters and destroy their ancestors, which seriously violated the sect's rules. I killed them to clean up the sect, which is reasonable. In the end, if someone refuses to accept it, I will kill until they accept it. Zanlu's words were taken for granted. Rui Wen felt as if she was the one who was wrong. She was tongue-tied and didn't know how to react. "Rui Wen, you still don't realize one problem. You are going to take the road of Valkyrie in the future." "What is a Valkyrie?" "The first is martial strength. You must at least reach the strength of the 9th heaven. This is the foundation. Without this foundation, you are not qualified to be called a warrior. Of course, only those who can reach the 25th heaven are qualified to be called strong. Secondly, in the world of Valkyrie, there are actually some requirements for obtaining the status of Valkyrie, but here, because of the different environment, I didn't specifically explain it. There are 4 ways to obtain the status of a Valkyrie. The first type is to be recognized by more than 10 martial gods. The second way is to kill other Valkyrie, and others will naturally assume that you have the ability of Valkyrie. The third type is commanding 100,000 people. The fourth is to kill 100,000 people. However, considering the difference in the world, in your world, 100,000 people may not be enough. You may have to kill millions or tens of millions. Zhang said it lightly, but the indifference and ruthlessness in his tone made a murderous fighter like Ruiwen feel a little shuddering. Ruiwen, you have to know one thing. You can't run around like a mouse crossing the street like Magneto, hiding in XZ. That's not the way of the Valkyrie. You can fight to the death, but you can't escape. You can lose the battle, but you can't admit defeat. If you want to go to the end of the road to the ***** of war, you have to make humans fear you, and dare not provoke you. Only in this way, the mutants under your protection can walk on the street openly, without worrying about being captured and locked up or sent to the test bed. And this requires strong military support and sufficient awareness. Ruiwen was overwhelmed by Zhang Lu's words, and she was extremely excited, and asked subconsciously, what enlightenment? Zhang Lu looked at Ruiwen, and said lightly, the consciousness to kill all non-mutants. Ruiwen immediately became sober as if cold water had been poured on her. She looked at her master in horror. Zhang Lu looked at her indifferently, and said, Magneto has this awareness, but he doesn't have this ability. Professor X has this ability, but he doesn't have this awareness. You have neither this ability nor this awareness, but you have this potential. For the sake of mutants, it's not talking about it, let alone playing tricks or playing games. This is a major decision that determines the future of a race or 2 races. If you don't even have this awareness, you won't be able to win. Quote, even if you are the best in the world by force in the future, if you don't have the heart of a warrior, others will always have a way to restrain you. Framed you, threatened you, use you, destroy you. So, Ruiwen, let me ask you, are you ready to fight against the world alone now? The pure white room, the walls are as smooth as a mirror, the interior is clean, without any decorations, there is only a wooden table in the middle, with a lighter on it. Number 01247, pick up the lighter on the table and show your ability. A cold voice came from a hidden speaker in the corner of the room. Go to hell, fool. Pyro John, wearing a prison uniform and a collar around his neck, banged on the wall frantically. Seeing that using his fists had no effect, he picked up the table and smashed it against the wall. Behind the one-way light transmitting tempered glass, several researchers were wearing white coats, holding notebooks, and looking at the crazy Pyro in the room. The leading scientist sighed, and said, this group of experimental animals is always like this, and they have never learned well. After he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and pressed a certain button on the desktop. After receiving the signal, the collar around Burning Man's neck in the test site immediately released a strong current. Ah! Pyro froze and fell to the ground, with electric arcs flashing on his body, trembling all over, and screaming. Seconds later, the scientist pressed the button again, and the arc on Pyro's body died down. Pyro twitched on the ground for a long time before barely getting up. Number 01247, pick up the lighter on the table and show off your ability. The scientist issued another command. Bah! Go to hell, you scumbags. Pyro's eyes were still full of rebelliousness, and the pain could only make him hate the human beings outside more, not make him give in. Tisk! The scientist pouted, and pressed the remote control button again, and the electric current flowed out of the collar again and injected into Pyro's body. This time he deliberately extended the time for a while, and it took twice as long as last time before he stopped the electric shock. And Pyro was already limp on the ground, unable to move. A puddle of fluid came out from under Pyro, and he lost control. The scientist frowned, it's really troublesome, let someone clean it up. He turned his head and ordered. Got it, Dr. Rancho. After receiving the order, the guard at the door said a few words on the communicator on his shoulder. After a while, a door opened in the laboratory room, and a man who looked like a cleaner walked in. Pyro, who was limp on the ground, suddenly jumped up from the ground, grabbed the lighter, and then ignited it to activate his ability, causing the flame to burn to the collar around his neck. But his cleverness was seen through by Dr. Lancher in the observation room long ago, and the collar around his neck released a large amount of electric current again, knocking him down heavily. Ah! Pyro screamed, twitching on the ground. The flame lost control. Like a rootless duckweed, it went out immediately. The cleaner had long been accustomed to this situation, ignored the tragedy of Burning Man, wiped the urine on the ground, and left the room again with tools. After the cleaner left and the door was closed and locked again, Dr. Rancher stopped the electric shock. He ignored the twitching Pyro on the ground, and continued to repeat the order just now in a cold tone. No 01247, pick up the lighter on the table and show your ability. Bah! Pyro was unable to get up, so he could only spat ****** the wall. It seems that the experimental animals need more training. Dr. Lancher was not angry, but felt that it was a waste of time. He threw the notebook in his hand to the assistant next to him, and said, "Leave the domestication of animals to you, I have other work to do." Coming out of the observation room, he walked along the corridor, walked to the end, went upstairs, came to the lounge, poured himself a cup of coffee, and took a rest. This is the rest area for scientific researchers, and ordinary staff rest on another floor, which is full of researchers and assistants. "Linda, how is your experiment going?" He sat in front of a female researcher with a cup of coffee and asked softly. "The data has been collected, but the reason for it is not yet clear." Linda replied with a smile. Lan Che sighed, and enviously said, "Then you are very lucky. My experimental animals have never been well behaved, and I haven't even collected all the data. But your experiment is relatively easy to produce results. The degree of difficulty here is too high for me to understand. How can I have this ability to violate the 3 laws of thermodynamics? I feel like I have learned physics for nothing." Linda Tukau rode. "Ha ha." Ranch laughed, and said with relief, "Mutants are like this," as if they appeared specifically to destroy the existing knowledge system. Linda glanced to the side, and then said in a low voice, "Actually, I think those magnetic field fighters are also like this. They don't conform to the existing biological knowledge at all." "You want to change your research direction?" Ranch asked in surprise. "Forget it, there are too few samples." Linda sighed, "The only samples are occupied by Professor Lambert. I heard that the sample is amazingly resistant to anesthetics, and the existing anesthetics are basically ineffective against him. Moreover, his body is so strong that it cannot be cut with a laser knife or an ultra-high pressure water knife. The experiment was only possible with the help of those magnetic field fighters. But those rough people, who don't know any fine-grained operations, can only chop and puncture vigorously with a knife." Linda is holding a coffee spoon in her right hand, Yu reading www.uakanshu. Com made a gesture of a magnetic field soldier stabbing people with a knife rudely, which was very funny, and made Lan Che laugh out loud. "I heard that this kind of magnetic field ability can be obtained through practice, and there will definitely be more and more experimental products in the future. If you are interested, you can first look at Professor Lambert's experimental records and do it in a targeted manner. Some knowledge reserves, we will talk about it when new samples arrive. That's the only way. In fact, I also wanted to try to see if I could learn some kind of qigong, but seeing my weak physique, I had no choice but to give up." Linda lamented. "Forget it, we all use our brains, unlike those rough people." Lan Che dismissed Linda's thoughts. "Human beings can stand out from the competition of nature not by their sharp minions, but by their smart brains. This world is ruled by smart people. So what if those mutants are more powerful? They are not lying in the experiment on the stage, let us slaughter. To be honest, I really hate doing live experiments. Every time I do experiments, I always feel like a butcher, especially when I hear the experimental subjects on the stage begging for mercy and screaming." Linda's mood was obviously a little depressed. "There's no way around that. Many abilities of mutants can only take effect when they are awake. Using anesthetics will affect the effect of the experiment. If you don't feel used to it, you can gag their mouths." Rancher comforted. Linda spread her hands and said, "Actually, I cut off their vocal cords." "What a great idea. I might try it next time." The two raised their coffee cups, touched each other, smiled at each other, got up and went back to the laboratory. Eric was placed on a test stand and was restrained by multiple chains. Instead of wrapping around the body, they go through the body, come out on the other side, and snap together. These holes were drilled out by a few magnetic field fighters with sharp Edelman alloy drill bits, and the flesh and blood left during the drilling process was just used for Professor Lambert's experiments. This laboratory is specially made for him, and all materials are degaussed. But now he is using the magnetic field rotation ability, which can easily tear these things into pieces, if he has hands. Incomplete limbs are his biggest weakness now. There are always 2 magnetic field fighters by his side watching to prevent him from escaping after recovering. They work in 3 shifts a day, 24 hours a day. The 2 magnetic field warriors are also responsible for interfering with his magnetic control with magnetic force, preventing him from breaking the chains on his body and hurting the vulnerable researchers. Scientists have yet to find out what method can be used to abolish Eric's ability to resist. Because Eric is both a strong magnetic field and a magneto. Polymer degaussing materials can restrain magneto, but they are of no use to magnetic field fighters. Edelman alloy may be able to restrain Eric, who has no limbs, but he was completely overcome by magneto. So they had to use magnetic field fighters to artificially restrict and suppress Eric at all times. Unless someone can create a martial art like the ultimate hard lock, the magnetic field will turn the martial artist, and the power cannot be abolished. But in the world of Marvel, the level of martial arts is too low. Even someone like Iron Fist uses martial arts at the level of electric current to push the realm. If you want to create similar martial arts, it will definitely not be possible in a short time. Although Magneto has been suppressed by people, his magnetic field power has always existed. In the surrounding laboratories, the screams of those mutants who were subjected to live experiments were all heard by him through magnetic field induction. Kill me, please, kill me, don't come here. You can tell me to do anything, don't torture me anymore. I am obedient, you can do any experiment, don't discharge it. Although Eric couldn't see the tragic situation at the scene, he knew the tragic experience of these compatriots well through his developed brain. Moreover, he has turned the magnetic field tenfold, and can read the thoughts of others, just like his old friend Professor X. He could completely see with his own eyes how those researchers slaughtered and dissected his fellow mutants by entering the brains of the people in the laboratory. Asshole, you fools, I'm going to kill you all. Eric's eyes were tearing apart, and he desperately urged the magnetic field power in his body. Regardless of the cracked and bleeding wounds on his body, he tried to break free from the suppression of the magnetic field fighters, kill all the ***** in front of him, and rescue the tortured fellow mutants. Come out. With his anger, the magnetic force in his body turned faster and faster, rising rapidly. 11 days, 12 heavens, 13 heavens. Oops, I can't suppress it anymore, quickly call a few more people. The magnetic field fighters at the scene yelled in panic. In a moment, all the magnetic field fighters ran over and worked together to suppress Eric. They knew very well that once Eric broke through the blockade, it would be difficult to suppress him. At this critical moment, they didn't care about the life and death of the sample, and with all their strength, they aimed at the wounds of Eric's limbs and hit again. The wounds that had just healed a little bit burst open again under the heavy blow, and blood spurted out under the pressure of the arteries, dyeing all the walls of the laboratory red. Eric's momentum was immediately frustrated, and the other fighters beat the wound even harder as soon as they saw it was effective. You all! Eric let out a wild roar, and his momentum jumped violently, soaring up, knocking out all the magnetic field fighters beside him. The magnetic field turns, 20 heavens. After losing the suppression of the magnetic field warrior, Eric's body shook slightly, and the Edelman alloy chains and polymer material ropes bound to his body broke. Magneto, Eric Lansher, out of trouble. Just when Eric was freed from the shackles and was about to start a killing spree, suddenly a person stepped in from outside the door, stretched out his hand, activated the magnetic field ability, and pressed him down again. Eric was furious, and once again instigated the magnetic field power, but was disturbed by the other party, and failed to fly. Instead, the blood in his body spurted out because of too much force. Although the recovery ability of the 20th Heaven's magnetic field fighter is exaggerated, it has not reached the level of instant recovery. Eric lost too much blood, and immediately felt flustered, and his whole body's strength could not be exerted by half. He hurriedly calmed down, controlled the muscles of his body to seal the wound first, and performed emergency treatment. But the other party didn't give him this time to heal now. The newly appeared magnetic field warrior punched his wound hard, causing blood to burst there again, and continued to bleed him. Eric gritted his teeth and stared at the magnetic field warrior who just came in with his eyes breathing fire. This man is tall, gray-haired and blue-eyed, wearing a strange battle armor, reading www. Uakanshu. The surging magnetic field on Com's body is actually the turning force of the magnetic field of the 20 heavens. Wow, it's really dangerous. If I'm one step late, your experimental sample will escape, Colonel Stryker. But it's just right, let me show the quality of my products. Thank you very much, Mr. Hammer. You have been of great help. If he escapes, it will definitely cause heavy losses to the base. Colonel Stryker, standing at the door, said very politely. Providing sufficient security for every customer has always been the pursuit of Hanmer military industry. You will never be disappointed if you choose our company's products. In the future, even if you are a warrior who has just entered the field of magnetic field rotation, put on our armor, immediately become a master of the 20th heaven. Justin Hammer proudly said. In the future, everyone will be Iron Man. Mr. Hammer is right. Iron Man is no longer unique in the future. Iron Man is already rotten. Stryker is well aware of the conflict between him and Tony Stark, and of course he doesn't mind a few compliments. Hammer Military's strong magnetic armor is very powerful. I am very satisfied and decided to equip every magnetic field fighter with one. Wise choice. Justin smiled, stretched out his hand and shook Stryker's hand, then took off the armor on the spot and handed it to a magnetic field warrior next to him. I will leave it to you to suppress him. It is recommended that you let him bleed every once in a while. The test product is too lively, which is not good for research work. Mr. Hammer is right. We were too polite to the samples before. You just need to give him a sigh of relief. After ordering the magnetic field fighters on the scene, Stryker stretched out his hand to scare the guests. Mr. Hammer's side, please, let's go upstairs and discuss the contract in detail. Justin was walking upstairs proudly when his phone rang suddenly. He glanced at it, his expression changed, and he smiled apologetically at Stryker. Sorry, I want to take a private call. Stryker understood, pointed to the conference room at the end of the corridor, and said goodbye, I'm going to the bathroom. Mr. Hammer can sit in the reception room for a while. After Stryker left, Justin entered the conference room before answering the phone. Mr. Obadiah, do you have any orders? Obadiah's angry growl was immediately heard on the other end of the phone. Justin Hammer, I gave you that thing, not to ask you to trouble others. What about what you promised me? When will you do it? Oh, Mr. Obadiah, you are still so cautious. Justin leaned on the sofa, crossed his legs while perfunctory casually. However, you also know that although the design of the strong magnetic armor 2.0 is quite complete, it must be tested in actual combat. After all, there is only one chance to attack. Once it fails, there will be no second time. Then but Tony Stark, you can't be too cautious, right? Don't fool me. Since this battle armor has been used, it is impossible to hide it from Tony. There are not many people who can get the design in his room, and he will find me soon. You must before that, kill him. The sooner the better. Obadiah's tone became worse and worse, and he was obviously agitated. Oh, this is difficult. All the magnetic field fighters on hand have died in the previous failed attack on Zon-Lu, and there is no suitable candidate for a while. Justin stretched out his fingers and flicked the dust on his trousers, continued to perfunctory. If this is the problem, then you don't have to worry, I still have a few magnetic field fighters on hand, you send me a set of finished products, and I will arrange for people to handle the matter. Oh, what a coincidence. All the strong magnetic armors have been sold, and the vibration gold is used up, and new armors cannot be produced in a short time. Justin twisted his body and let himself sit be more comfortable. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a while, and Obadiah's furious voice came again. Justin, are you trying to renege on your debt? What, do you think that now that the military is backing you up, I can't do anything about you? Or do you think that no one can kill you if you become a magnetic field warrior? Are my things so easy to get? Now that his face has been torn apart, Justin simply no longer hides it. He sat up straight, sneered and said sarcastically to Obadiah on the other end of the phone. Grandpa, do you really think I'm a fool? You can obviously produce this thing yourself, so why are you taking advantage of me? From the beginning, you made up your mind to pay attention, and you want me to take the blame for you. When I killed Tony Stark, you can stay out of it, and you can even transform yourself and avenge Tony Stark. At that time, without Tony Stark stopping you, you can freely produce magnetic armor in the Stark group, right? And with your genuine armor, who will buy my pirated goods? In the end, I just made the knife in your hand for nothing, sold 100 sets of armor, and made a little money, and you can sit on the shares of the entire Stark group and become the real Stark, the master of the group. If I'm not wrong, you must have someone secretly come to buy my armor, right? What you need is the armor produced by Hanmer Military Industry. As for the person who will do it, you have already prepared it. However, I'm afraid you didn't expect that I've been on guard against you for a long time. I didn't sell armor indiscriminately for the sake of making money. All buyers must be clean before I'm willing to sell. All sold the battle armors are all numbered, and I will take over them personally when they are sold to anyone. When the time comes, who killed Tony Stark, I'll find out. So, you can only come to me again. How? I'm not wrong. Obadiah was silent for a moment, his voice much calmer. Justin, I underestimated you. You see things very clearly. You deserve to be able to rely on a copycat to give a military-industrial group to such a large-scale person. But don't forget, even if Tony finds out, so what? I just accidentally lost the blueprint of the armor. He will never suspect that I sold the blueprint to a competitor on purpose, right? But since you have produced the battle armor, the Stark group naturally doesn't have to hide it. If you don't do what I say, I can ask Stark group to produce these strong magnetic armor at any time. Will the military support you at that time? What you are worried about now is that I will kill the donkey and use you as a scapegoat. I believe that you must have recorded today's conversation. Now let's talk about it. If you have any conditions, feel free to mention them, negotiable. However, if you dare to tease me again, I won't be polite. Or, do you think offending Tony Stark is more terrible than offending me? Obadiah's voice was low and hoarse, and Justin was sweating coldly behind his back. He laughed dryly twice, and softened his tone. How is it possible, Mr. Obadiah? I have always respected you very much. Isn't this just for self-protection? But, are you sure you can solve the troubles afterwards? That's Tony Stark, the most talented guy in the world. Quote. Humph. Obadiah snorted coldly, and said coldly. Only a living genius is valuable, and a dead genius is nothing more than a piece of rotten meat. Only a genius who can be used by others is eligible to be remembered. Anton Vanke back then was not inferior to Howard Stark, but who remembers him now? Justin secretly remembered the name Anton Vanke, and then asked tentatively. Mr. Obadiah, I plan to build a position in the stock market first, short the shares of the Stark Group, and then I plan to take the opportunity to absorb some shares. About this. It's up to you to short. Anyway, after Tony Stark's death, the stock market will definitely fluctuate. If you don't short, others will naturally short. But you must control the size of the position, not too large. You are a smart person, and you must know what to do. How to do it. In addition, you cannot absorb more than 5% of the shares, otherwise, all shareholders will have opinions. Also, you do not have a seat on the board of directors. Quote. Obadiah said a lot about it, but it was also because of this that Justin was convinced that Obadiah would indeed not silence him again. Don't worry, I know how to measure. Leave the matter of Tony Stark to me. You just need to wait for the good news. Chairman Obadiah. The riots in New York finally subsided. After it was confirmed that it was not a nuclear bomb attack, the mood of the people eased and it became easier to restore order. But the aftermath of this incident is still not over. Ordinary people don't know how this accident happened, and the officials can do whatever they want, but those high-level people are not easy to be fooled. They easily learned the truth and the cause and effect of the matter from those human stick fighters, and then all the high-level officials wanted to go crazy. This is another moth made by the military. If the military can get Zhang Lu done, they will certainly be happy to see it. After all, they are also unhappy with the existence of Zhang Lu. But the military failed, and was nearly wiped out. What else? All the pots must be from the military. It's not that there are fanatical politicians and generals clamoring to kill Zhang Lu, but rational high-level people are the majority. When they do things, they look at the benefits first, and the risks second. Killing Zhang Lu has little benefit and great risk, so it's not worth doing. In particular, this Zhang Lu is simply a lunatic, and he actually did it in the martial arts hall. According to the expert analysis given by the analysts of the intelligence department, Zhang Lu is very aware of the damage caused by the Battle of the Magnetic Field Fighters, and Zhang Lu is also very concerned about the inheritance of the ultimate Wuliang sect, and will not use force within the scope of the martial arts school. But it turns out that the so-called expert analysis is pure fart. Zhang Lu brazenly fought in the martial arts hall, killing all the disciples, and he didn't even blink an eye. After killing people, he ran to a 5-star hotel to rest with the remaining 2 disciples as if nothing had happened. Is this not taking murder seriously? Or are you planning to take the customers in the 5-star hotel as hostages? Moreover, among his 2 disciples, there was also a mutant wanted, Mystique Raven. What is his relationship with Raven? What's the deal with mutants? These things must be taken into consideration by politicians. Before finding out Zhang Lu's true character, no one is willing to try it rashly. In the end, everyone pushed back and forth, and the job fell into the hands of professionals. S.H.I.E.L.D., they specialize in this, and give them their professional counterparts. Nick's face was dark, and he scolded the military in his heart. When he was dealing with various organizations, he told them not to violate the ultimate Wuliang sect's rules, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous, and no one would believe them. Well now, they've made the trouble out of it and let themselves go and wipe their asses. Nick had obtained some information from Carol before, and knew that the last time the 2 sides fought was because of the door rules, and this time, it was again. In front of everyone in the Security Council, he once again emphasized the issue of the ultimate Wuliang sect rules, and demanded to warn all organizations that if there is another disaster caused by the sect rules next time, S.H.I.E.L.D. will not care. Whoever caused the trouble will solve it by himself. In fact, because Nick lost the memory of the last time, there was a serious deviation in his judgment of Zhang Lu's character. Zhang Lu, who is not insane, is actually quite easy to deal with. Moreover, the so-called door rules are not that important to Zhang Lu. Door regulations are established by the system, not Zhang Lu. Execution of Zhang V is very flexible. The specific implementation standard depends on the mood. It is also a heavy punishment. Killing them is a heavy punishment, and abolishing them is a heavy punishment, and letting them practice, Eric Dao, is still a heavy punishment. He knows how to hold the ultimate heartlock, but he didn't teach it to anyone, nor did he use it on anyone. But he won't tell Nick. It's okay to let him misunderstand, maybe it can save a lot of trouble. Sit down, try the special steak here, it tastes pretty good. Zhang Lu motioned to the chef next to him to prepare one for Nick. Nick was also polite, and sat down next to the 3 of them, poured a glass of red wine himself, and moistened his throat first. He deliberately chose the meal time to come here. Psychology experts believe that when enjoying delicious food, people will be in a relatively better mood, and the possibility of using force will be slightly lower by a few percentage points. Nick raised his glass and signaled to Zhang Lu. The 2 touched each other. He took a sip, felt relieved, put down his glass, and asked tentatively. Your martial arts gym has been razed to the ground by you now, what are your plans next? Just build another one. Zhang Lu enjoyed the food in peace without looking up. Where are those dead disciples? Nick turned the goblet while watching the expression on Zhang Lu's face. Just recruit again. Zhang Lu's expression didn't change at all. I heard that the conflict this time was due to mutants. Nick continued to probe. The military warned me not to meddle in the affairs between humans and mutants, and to be honest and wise. Zhang Lu looked at Nick with a half smile. Isn't it funny that a group of rabbits teach lions and tigers how to do things? Nick took a long breath and asked, so, you felt that your dignity was damaged, so you killed them all. The generation who deceived the master and destroyed the ancestors, why keep it? What about the innocent disciples who were implicated? It's just collateral damage. Anyway, they also have a fight with my master and apprentice, and send them some funeral objects. What's the relationship? They are also your disciples. Isn't it wrong for them to die? Weakness is the original sin. Zhonglu put down his chopsticks, wiped his mouth lightly, and began to speak at length. There has never been anything fair in this world. Some people are destined to be this hero, or that hero after birth is destined to be the protagonist. And some people are born to be villains. Why, what's worse is that some people, who can't even be villains, are destined to be passers-by for the rest of their lives. This is fate. Hit, bet, decided, and I gave them a chance to change their destiny. But fate is so easy to change, it is no longer fate. In the process of changing their fate against the heavens, they will inevitably encounter various dangers. At the least, they will be disabled and die, and at the worst, the whole family will be wiped out. This is the price of changing fate against the sky. Zhonglu pointed at Wang Yunxiang, who was eating honestly beside him, and said, "Look at him." Old Wang was originally destined to be a homeless man, a small person for a lifetime. Maybe one day he will die on a certain street corner. But the day he stepped into the ultimate infinity hall, his fate was being rewritten. Not only him, but many other ordinary people also have the opportunity to change their lives against the sky. They can finally change from a nameless passerby to a dragon suit with a name. But it doesn't mean that if you embark on the path of changing your life against the sky, you will definitely be able to transform into a supporting role or a protagonist. They will face all kinds of choices. If they make the right choice, they can continue to play the role or become a supporting role. If they make a wrong choice, they will still be nothing but cannon fodder. The previous choice is one of them. Old Wang made the right choice, so he is still alive and continues to play his tricks. But those who made the wrong choice have become a puddle of meat under the martial arts hall. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.